Hold on. I think there's something wrong with my chair. I don't think if I can see me. Can you see me back there? It is 6 o'clock. I don't know that my chair is high, but if I touch it, it'll go low and that won't work either. So if you can't see me, I apologize. We'll adjust it in a minute. It is 6 o'clock on May 22nd, and I call this regularly scheduled city council meeting to order unless I see an objection. I see none. We have a couple of changes that I want to get council approval on now. One is that for our invocation, for our Pledge of Allegiance, our veterans are going to lead us in that. And then also I'd like to, if council will humor me, move number 12 to after number 1. So does anyone object to that agenda change? Brent, is that agenda okay? Change with you? Okay. All right. Seeing no, do I need a motion to change the agenda? I do. Okay. So could someone make an emotion?
So move. I move to move agenda item 12, discussion item up till after public comments.
No, after, I think there's somebody here to do a presentation. So after number 1,
After
so
number
2.
Move 12 to after number 1.
Thank you. Moved by Councilman Seconder, seconded by Councilman Price. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that agenda change happens. Councilwoman Lautenbacher, can you lead us in the invocation, please? Please rise if you can.
At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. I now invite John Butler to come forward, and he will speak at the podium, and all veterans, please come forward and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please. Joe, you can go down if you want. Catherine too, you can go down there if you want. Come down. Ken.
And salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order arms.
Thank you all. And just a reminder that we have our annual Memorial Day ceremony at Brick Run Park at 10 o'clock in the morning on Memorial Day. We hope you can join us. Eric, how are we handling this award? Oh, public comments. Never mind. We're not handling the award yet. It gives you time to figure that out. Mark Lisi or Mark, you can say your last name for us, please. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome to the podium. I'm sure the green light is on, but just make sure. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mark Lisi.
Lacey, thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the residents of Village North Court in opposition of the inclusion of section of C3, the Path Foundation master plan connecting Womack to Peeler. Since the last meeting, I've met with Councilman Price and Pauline Hart about the perhaps logistics of the inclusion of that path. Hopefully now that they've seen what it would take from an infrastructure standpoint and a cost perspective, will agree with us that the inclusion of that plan is really just for the benefits of the residents of Village North, who have the majority of which have said that they would oppose the inclusion of that portion of the path. Also, hopefully have seen that the neighborhood is a single ingress and egress neighborhood with no sidewalks, and that just adds to the the public's use of the streets and the safety of those residents. Hoping to just remove that entirely from the master plan. Again, for all those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Rock.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening. You'll have 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, Michael Rock. I live not far from the gentleman who just spoke, and I'm unaware of a majority of the residents who oppose this. In fact, I know quite a few who are in favor of it, including myself. Last time I was here, I spoke with you all and gave you some stats from around the country on similar paths and the impact positively to property values. I debunked the mystery of the mysterious appearing threats that had been previously posted as well. Bodily harm to people who live near path like these, and that just was not materialized as evidenced by the police officers in the several studies that were conducted who in fact found no such issue to be found. Again, there is another line item, I believe, that's been in the budget since 2018 specific to this area and the path in question for a design. I think that was $100,000. That's been again there since 2018. We have yet to see that plan. And for those of us that are in favor of it, we look forward to seeing that as part of this larger plan. And with that, I appreciate your time. But again, there is not a majority in that neighborhood that does not favor that plan. There's quite a few of us who are in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hickey, Bob Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Bob Hickey. I'm a longtime resident of Dunwoody. I've lived here 45 plus years. I'm here tonight to support the police. I think that the police deserve our support. 2 weeks ago at this meeting, you proclaimed Dunwoody as the Bikers Month, okay? Bikers Month in Dunwoody for the month of May. That's 5% of the Dunwoody people who are bikers, and the other 95% of us support the police. Coincidentally, it just happens to be that the same month, same week that you took the bike ride, okay, from City Hall to one of the restaurants, is the same week as it's National Police Week. They had a moment of prayer, okay, the following day when you took the bike ride. Now, why weren't you supporting the police for the month of May instead of making it Bikers Month? Okay. I think you need to walk the walk, okay, instead of just talking the talk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Allison Thornton. When you're at the microphone, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Thornton, and I am also a longtime Dunwoody resident. I've lived here for 24 years and raised my kids here. They've gone to school here and all that. We're now empty nesters, and we love to walk and we love to bike. And we often end up driving our bicycles up to Big Creek Greenway or into town. And we even have debated occasionally when we first became empty nesters, moving into town near the Beltline because we just love that accessibility so much. But we love Dunwoody more. And we love our church. We love all the community here. And so I just want to thank you all for putting in the effort to make this a more walkable and bikeable community. I just saw one of my empty nester friends. They moved to Bellwood right across from Dunwoody Baptist, trying to get to have their life more walkable. And I just saw him riding a bike kind of precariously to the Publix on that little tiny sidewalk. And I know he would feel safer with these kind of trails that you all are considering. And I would also throw out there that I just think that the Dunwoody Village corridor would be an excellent place to start, both on Mount Vernon and Chamblee Dunwoody, because so many neighborhoods are off those two streets. And we walked up to Barn on Friday night. It was so lovely with the weather and seeing neighbors out, and it just really builds a sense of community. And so I would encourage you to start there. Thanks again for all your efforts.
Thank you. Nathan Sparks. You'll have 3 minutes, please.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I am here as a Dunwoody resident, wishing to express my appreciation for the work and the openness you had with the Path Foundation. I am fully in support of the ideals of that. And I have one suggestion to make tonight. I'm a resident of the North Springs neighborhood, and our North Springs Drive is a part of that plan. It's planned for paving this year. And I'm thinking that because it's also a part of the Path Foundation to be a calm street, that would be it would be a good fiscal approach to combine those efforts. And these are the types of things I believe in terms of sustainability, in terms of making low impacts on the environment and smart fiscal decisions, as we also make our communities walkable and bikeable, which is what I'm all supportive of. I grew up doing that, but when I moved to Dunwoody, I feared doing that with my children. I had a very precarious trip to the library and never made that again with my kids because my son was off 300 yards in front of me. My daughter was behind me. So that never happened again. But I think if we had wider pathways to bike along our city streets, we'd feel more comfortable and safe in doing so. I also believe that connectivity to Georgetown through the North Springs Drive and through also Kellogg Springs would be a great way to get over to Georgetown, as well as parks and the shopping. Thank you for what you're doing, the transparency and the diligence in this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Henry Cohen. When you get up here, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Henry Cohen. I'm currently president of Brook Farm HOA, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a problem we're having there. I did communicate via an email that I sent to each of the council members and the mayor, so I know you're aware of it, but I wanted to make a few public comments. And bear with me, I realize this is a very provincial problem. It's a small part of Dunwoody, but nonetheless, it's serious to the people who are living there. The subject of, well, let me start by saying that as has been mentioned before, a perimeter fence was installed around the Brook Farm community by the developers in the 1980s, and it's a valued asset of the community. The part that borders Waterford subdivision, now Waterford Park, is particularly vulnerable to intrusion because there's a narrow band of woods that separates it from our public area with tennis courts and pool. And over the years, unknown people periodically have tried to breach the fence there, have knocked it down, have cut holes in it. About 3 weeks ago, we undertook the expense of installing a nice chain link fence along that segment of the community. Unfortunately, this 3 days ago, someone maliciously and with intent brought tools, came across the fence, detached it, pulled it down, made damages that the fence company today gave me an estimate of $1,400 to repair. When the city bought Waterford Park, you became our neighbor, and I feel like you have certain responsibility to see that we're not suffering as a result of that proximity. There's a lot of activity in the woods along that fence. People have piled up large limbs to cross over the fence, and now finally have tried to knock it down. So what do we want? We think that it's incumbent on the city to try to deter future problems. And fortunately, Police Chief Grogan has already communicated with me and told me he's going to step up patrols in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And if you could just make connection with Mr. Walker, who's somewhere, I don't know where, is Brent here? He's right behind you. If you just make connection with him so he can reach out to you another time. Thank you. Ken Odom, please.
Hello, council. My name's Ken Odom. I'm a member of the Georgetown neighborhood, and over the last 2 weeks, we've had several police incidences. One, people were running through cars. The other, there was a car chase all the way down and ended at the end of Old Springhouse Lane, and they tried to run over the bridge and then ended up, couldn't get away, so they went up into a cul-de-sac and the police were able to get them there. But talking with the police officers, they mentioned to us that we need to look into whether if we can get lights installed or cameras or some type of security. Otherwise, this could continue to be a threat. Like I said, it's only the last 2 weeks, but it's something we'd like to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. And also Brent again, Mr. Walker. Thank you. Okay. Donna Cardenas, if you'll just introduce yourself and say your last name, please. That is introducing yourself.
Hi there. My name is Donna Cardenas. I'm a longtime Dunwoody resident, 23 years. Thank you for allowing us all to speak. I would actually like to say that I can appreciate where the residents of Brook Farm are coming from. However, in listening to some of the other comments, it seems like there's already activity of a negative way going on in the area, and having a path with traffic there might deter some of that. If you've got people coming back and forth, might slow some of that down. So that actually could be a positive. For the rest of it, just I've commented before on having the ability to walk to or ride your bike to restaurants and grocery stores rather than add to the traffic. My son commented today how bad the Atlanta traffic is, and he's not lying. So if you add, remove some of the car traffic and add the bikers and the walkers, not only does that cut down on car traffic and pollution, but it also, as one other resident mentioned, it adds to a sense of community. All of our surrounding neighbor cities have already done that, and you can definitely see it's just, it makes it a fun place to hang out when you go to places and you've walked there or ridden your bike and you see your neighbors. I think it just adds for a much pleasanter experience. It brings, it's not even a word, pleasanter. It brings people want to come and move to our area, which brings money to the businesses, and just, I don't see any negatives to it. So I said a lot of this before. I just wanted to repeat it and hope that council will appreciate and hear what I have to say. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Jay Pryor.
I am Jay Pryor, been resident of Dunwoody since, 78, not too long after I got back from Vietnam. I want to ask for your favorable consideration of the proposed Vietnam Memorial in Brook Run Park. The Vietnam War was fairly complicated. There were a lot of questions that were asked about why we were involved in Vietnam and so forth. There were demonstrations opposing the war. They were not unusual and they were widespread. However, in the face of the questions, the demonstrations, the men and women of the United States volunteered for the military. 3/4 of the military in Vietnam were volunteers. I'm not saying that they wanted to be there. One of the most popular songs in Vietnam was, "We got to get out of this place," if it's the last thing we ever do. Unfortunately, for more than 58,000 Americans, it was in fact the last thing that they ever did. So I'm asking for your favorable consideration for the memorial for the thousands of Vietnamese military who fought and died in the war, for the more than 58,000 people whose names are on the Vietnam Wall, and for those of us, both South Vietnamese and Americans, who have the distinct honor and privilege of calling ourselves Vietnam veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the cards I have for public comment. We'll have another session of public comment at the end of the meeting, if anyone remains here with us. Next up now, Eric, who's starting this presentation? Nope, not you. We're doing the GMIS stuff first.
Yes, we have a gentleman coming up to
Okay.
present the award.
Thank you. Welcome. If you'll just welcome. If you'll just introduce yourself and you have the microphone, make sure the green light's on.
It is. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Jonathan Reich. I am the CIO for the city of Gainesville. I'm also on the nonprofit board for the Georgia chapter of GMIS International. And thank you for letting us do this honor of presenting this award. We had a regional conference in spring. I think it was about a month ago, really. And we were able to recognize some of our members in what they do. And our members are creative technology leaders throughout the state. So your technology leader here in the city of Gainesville, I'm sorry, city of Dunwoody, it's just so normal. This is a normal thing, is Ginger LePage. And Ginger's joined GMIS recently, and I couldn't be more proud. So I'd like, if you will, for me to present her with the award she received at our conference in May. And the Spirit of GMIS Award is to really recognize Georgia GMIS members who support the growth and development of GMIS and recruit new members, instill all of the things we're doing and try to be an evangelist to our nonprofit group throughout the state. It's reserved for really those individuals who truly exemplify passion for the organization and their community. So it's a very distinguished award within our organization. So if I could, Ginger LePage, I'd like to present to you on behalf of the Georgia GMIS Board of Directors and our membership, the city of Gainesville. I've done that twice now.
Okay. It's okay.
City of Gainesville, no, I'm kidding.
Right.
But the Spirit of GMIS Award goes to Ginger LePage, your technology director here at the city of Dunwoody. And really quick, Mayor, if I may, just real quick, there was multiple people that nominated her for this. We had 2 individuals that independently made the nomination for her, and we couldn't be more proud, and you should be proud of her as your technology director for the city. So thank you for allowing me the time.
We are, and we appreciate her and her department's efforts on a daily, if not hourly basis. So thank you very much for making the trip here to present the award. And Ginger, we're very proud of you. And like I said, we appreciate your department's efforts. Sometimes they're Herculean every day. So thank you. Let's give her another round of applause. Now it's you. Now it's Brent.
Sorry, Mayor. I
That's
just got
okay.
excited.
You're so excited. That's fine.
So tonight I have the pleasure of introducing John Butler with the Atlanta Vietnam Veterans Business Association. They contacted us through Jay Pryor several months ago about wanting to build a Vietnam War Memorial here in Dunwoody. And it just fits hand in glove with everything we're trying to do with our own Veterans Memorial at Brook Run. We've worked for several months coming up with a concept to share with you all and with the community. It will be built in the same location at the base of the hill from the Veterans Memorial, if you all decide to go forward with it. I'm not going to take up too much time because John has a wonderful presentation. And so with that, I'll introduce Mr. Butler if he will come up and present.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes,
Can you see this?
we can see it, and I assume y'all can see it. Yes, I see nodding heads. Okay.
Thank you. I don't trust technology unless I actually see it
Right.
work.
Right.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mayor Deutsch, City Council members. City Manager Linton, and we appreciate Brent Walker and the work we've been able to do together over the last several months. I want to recognize and pay a tribute to Georgia Representative Long Tran, who's here. We appreciate his support. I don't know how many of you know him. He's a terrific guy. And I want to, if I can do this. Sorry, just a second. Nope. All right. There we go. I would like to start by introducing the project members of the team. And then I want to go into, rather than talking about what, I'm going to talk about why, just for a brief moment. So I would like for the Vietnamese American community. How many of you know about the Vietnamese American community of Georgia? There are 5,000 or 6,000 members that are participants of that organization. There are about 100,000 Vietnamese Americans in Georgia. They are the most productive, most patriotic citizens you will ever meet. And not the least of which, probably high on the list, is Trammy Nguyen, the president of that organization. If you'll stand, Trammy, and if you'll come forward, I would like for her to share a few words. While she's coming, I would appreciate it if the other members of her team, part of the project team, Hugh Lee is unavailable at this time. Lei Duan is here. Lei, there she is. Trin Ha, Trin's right over here. He's an ARVN veteran. Carolyn Nguyen, business owner in Athens. And Wayne Pham is a significant portion of our group. And then for the Vietnamese or the American side, I'll introduce those guys in a second. But I want for Trammy to share with you a little bit about what this is about as far as the Vietnamese American community is concerned, and about her personal story. And her daughter is also here, may share a few words, and it'll be short.
Good afternoon. First of all, my name is Trammy Nguyen. I am currently the president of the Vietnamese American community of the USA and Georgia. It is my honor to be here in front of the mayor, the city council, the staff, and especially the South Vietnam veterans, Vietnam veterans here. I got so excited. I prepared so much, but I will speak from the heart instead of the presentation. It's been 47 years since the Vietnam War. And until today, we still, as the second generations of the Vietnamese American who live in Georgia in America, it's haunted me and it's bothered me a whole lot. That's their sacrifice. There are 58,000 Americans who died or went missing during the Vietnam War, and 300,000 South Vietnam soldiers had died during that war. And when I came to America in 1991, I know nothing about the war. I was raised by the communists. And when my dad came home after 13 years being captured by the VC, he told me the story about Vietnam. And we are lucky enough to able to come to America under the government's sponsorship. And since 2016, when I became the president of the community, I vowed to myself that one of the mission and the goal that I have to make it possible is to build a monument to honor the service and the sacrifice of those who died during Vietnam War. And to be honest with you, this project is something we've been long for, but it's so hard to come across because nowadays, not many people really care about the history and the sacrifice of those who are sitting right here today, able to make it back. Because a lot of their friends have never came and returned home. My mom raised all 5 of us by herself. And when 13 years later, somebody came home and said, "Call me Dad." And I knew the story from then. The books and the history didn't tell you whole much of it. But when I met with these gentlemen and those in my community, we want to make sure that their sacrifice never be forgotten. And so it is so exciting that we're able to have a chance today instead of you sharing and really honor and hope that you will approve for this project. And this project will be the only 7th in the whole America who has the statue of the American and the Vietnamese soldier side by side. There are 6 of them in the whole US. There are one in Arlington and Texas, and Houston, Texas, another one in Orlando, Florida. There's one in Westminster in California, and there's one in Salt Lake County in Utah and Wichita, Kansas. And this would be the 7th that has, there's a lot of monuments around, but not the one with the soldier of American and the Vietnamese side by side. And John gonna go into more details of it. I just want to take this opportunity and thank you and hope that you consider there's a chance for us to do this to honor. And this is not just a memory, but to honor and to recognize about the timeline of the war and why our generations who not even a part of the war, but have suffered and still carry that part with us. And with that, I hope that we will have opportunity to work with this beautiful city and the park that we will have the monument. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. One of the understatements of the month is how wonderful these people are, and what a genuine blessing it is to be a part of their of being able to work together. I want to just a moment just tell you, I appreciate what Jay had to say. It really wasn't planned. I wanted to go back for a second and tell you that I forgot to mention Jay Pryor is our liaison with the city of Dunwoody. We were able to, through Jay's connections, be able to connect some of you all, and we really appreciate that. As I mentioned, Brent Walker has been a key component of helping us figure out what is appropriate for the city so that we can balance that with what the VAC wants and what we would like to do together. Samuel Robinson just had his knee replaced last Friday. He's available by phone, but I did not ask him to hobble over here. He is the owner of Memories Last Forever Monuments. He has developed a dozen or more Vietnam monuments across the country and is the one that we're working with on this one. Alan Gravel, if you'll stand, Alan. Alan is the owner of Willow Construction, a heavy construction outfit. He's part of our Atlanta Vietnam Veteran Business Association group. He's the one that did the site work for the wall that heals at the Newtown Park for the Veterans Memorial for veterans for the wall. If you've seen that, if you haven't, you need to see that. It's an incredible thing. And Cho Wall is unable to be here tonight. She is our architect. She's actually Vietnamese American. Her mother lives in Dunwoody. She came over here from Vietnam herself. So we have some good people working on this. I want to tell you that most of us, I can speak for the AVVBA real quickly. We're about 250 members. All of us served in Vietnam, either boots on the ground or in the waters or the air over Vietnam. All of us came home to lead productive professional lives. We don't whine about what treatment we got when we get back. When we got back, we do something about it, and we serve veterans, and we provide memories that last forever for veterans. So we put 26 memorials across this city, honoring individual veterans who were from Atlanta who died in Vietnam. We also have thanks to Brian Tate, who is, if he'll stand briefly, Brian. Brian is the chairman of our foundation scholarship fund. Through his work and our joint efforts, we currently have about $8,000 of endowment funds that will last forever after we're dead and gone, that go to service members who are coming out of active duty to live not only productive lives, but have careers rather than just having a job. So we provide scholarship funds for those people coming out of the service through that scholarship, those endowments. So that's what we do. It's our nature. It is therapy for us. It helps us, and we appreciate the feeling of achievement that it gives us. I want to start with the. Can you see the? Okay. I'm showing you this first because the video, the flyover video, has a sense of what the park is going to look like and what the monument's going to look like and what the statue is going to look like, but it does not currently have an accurate representation of what the soldiers that are being, the statues are going to look like. So the one on the right is actually the closest thing we have. Every statue, there's only, as Tremy said, there's only 6 currently in the whole country that have done this. This one is one that we're going to be probably the closest to look like will be this one, the American soldier on the left, the Vietnamese soldier on the right. And there'll be some changes, of course, but that gives you a sense of what the statue is going to look like. There will be 2 main memorial panels, and what you will also see when you see the rendering in a minute will look like a list of names. We are not going to attempt to name the 300,000 South Vietnamese who lost their lives or the 58,000 Americans who lost their lives. We're going to talk about the collection, the collective sacrifice of these soldiers who lost their lives for the sake of freedom. So there's 2 of those, one for the Vietnamese and one for the Americans who lost their lives on polished black marble. We'll have marble benches around the area of the plaza area. And there will be no donor information on anything to do with the plaza. That's going to be outside of the plaza. There will be the opportunity for people to have in memory of on the backs of some of these benches where you can see it. But no donor information. There will be donor information along the sidewalk. You'll see all this in a minute. Be a slanted wall, actually a total of 32 feet long on either side of a walkway that goes all the way to the street. And the slanted wall will be about 30 inches tall and when it's all said and done. And there'll be a variation of opportunities for people to donate and have their name on there. As I've said, every time I show this presentation, not just to you, I'm not patronizing you. Dunwoody is a beautiful city. It's the best place in Atlanta to live, really. I wish I could afford to live here. I live in Woodstock. I'm just a redneck, but this is a beautiful place. I love this place. Brook Run Park is one of the most beautiful cities parks in the city. And you already have a memorial, a veterans monument, a veteran memorial in Brook Run Park. So what we're talking about doing is putting this memorial in that corner on the left as you look at the picture. There's a space there for that. We've worked back and forth with Brent and some of his team to figure out the right kind of footprint for that. And that's what the footprint looks like. So you'll see the flat area, the plaza is about 30 by 40 feet. And the statue is in the middle, actually toward the back of the middle. The back of the memorial has a sidewalk that goes all the way around to the existing memorial. It's about 100 feet walkway. It's about a 45-foot walkway from the plaza to the sidewalk, about 50 feet to the street. And you'll see in that picture, those black indications on the side of that walkway are the donor panels. The benches go around the sides in a circular pattern around the plaza, the statue, and then the 2 monument walls behind it. Not that anybody cares, but just in case you're interested, this is what the elevation looked like. And the significance there is Brent made sure that we did not make this as tall as we wanted to. It's not going to be 60 feet tall. It's the tallest height of the point, the highest point of this monument is 10 feet tall, which aligns with the bottom of the existing Veterans Memorial. So we want to be careful that we did not overwhelm the existing memorial. So we're sensitive to that. I'm going to show you a video and I give you a warning that looks almost like photographs. It is obviously not. This is supposed to be a rendering to illustrate the concept of what this is going to look like when it's done. There's music. Enjoy the music. Pretend there's music. The behind this is facing all the way through the other side is the existing memorial. This is from the back coming toward the street. Again, those veterans, a 3D rendering that we could find for this video are outdated images, but at least it shows you where the images will be. The flag poles will be there'll be not Ballard, Bollard, there'll be a sleeve for the flagpoles. They'll be removed unless we have an event. There will be color renderings engraved in the memorial walls of the South Vietnamese flag on one panel and the American flag on the other panel. That will be permanent, but the flags themselves will be removed unless there's an event. Low level lighting at night, as you can see, all along the walkway, in the front of the statue, in front of the walls, on both sides of the walls. An urn for celebration of life. So far, so good. Question. So far, so good, I hope. Obviously, we're very excited about this. We're very hopeful about this. The budget, there's actually two other projects. There's actually three other projects I'm personally aware of. I'm not involved in any of those. One of them is $1.5 million for a scope of work that does not look like it's even as much as this. Another one is 6 million, another one's 8 million. This is a $450,000 monument budget with $40,000 of contingency. We have already ordered the marble granite because the lead time is long. We're not assuming that you'll approve it. If you do, that'd be wonderful, but we're going to use it somewhere. So we went ahead and ordered the marble planet, the model, the black marble granite, and black, I can't talk. Black marble panel, black granite panels. Sorry. And we've ordered the statue because that takes again another lead time. We have different levels of donor sizes, and there'll be recognizable, different areas of the donor panels congruent with the amount of donated. And we have these levels of donations, and we do accept checks today if you're interested. So anyway, so that's where we are. I want you to, for your consideration, I'm open to any questions you have for me, for Trammy, for Alan, or anybody else on the project team. I didn't mention Jay. I did mention Jay didn't have any stand. You saw Jay a while ago. We've been working on this for a while, and we feel very confident that we have our cost, our variables defined well, and prepared to move forward with your blessing, of course.
I just have a quick question while Brent comes up, I think. Could you explain the urn again? It looked like something was coming out the top. Was that just?
Incense. They do, a lot of their members are
Okay.
Buddhists, and they do incense. They burn incense during ceremonies.
Okay, all right, but it wouldn't be there all the time. It would
The
just
urn would
be,
be there all the time.
right, but the incense, right,
Right.
Okay.
Just when there's an event.
right, okay.
Mhm.
All right, y'all can stay up here too. I'm gonna ask if council has any questions. This was a lovely presentation. Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. As I mentioned to you in the foyer before the meeting, my dad spent a year in country, so I appreciate the significance of this. My question is about whether the statue needs to have the guns raised. It looks like that's the direction you're going in, and it's a rough time for guns in the country.
That's a good question. The goal is to represent soldiers who fought in a war. And so what we are trying to depict is what and by the way, there's a couple of Arvin infantry men here in the building, in the room as well. When the Americans were infantry, day patrol, there's a lot of different variables, but we're using the model of a day patrol infantry soldier, both Vietnamese and Americans, and they carried an M16. I don't know how else we would depict a soldier going to war unless he's carrying a rifle.
Well, the depiction you show that you say you don't want to use is where it's more like parade rest. They're just not raised, the guns.
Well, it's a valid question. We can have the weapons pointed down, But again, it depends on whether you want to accurately reflect what it was like for these soldiers who served.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think it's
Yeah.
just a point of consideration.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilman Lautenbacher's concerns. I love the idea of this memorial and I love what it means. I am concerned about the depiction of guns in the current environment in our community. And so perhaps you could go back to your artist and share our concerns and see if there's another way to get the same message. Is that a good way to say it, Catherine? Across, just something that I'm not sure it would be as positively received as we want this memorial to be received. I understand everything you just said and I'm fully in support, but in our community, there is a lot of concern about guns. And so.
Something worth considering, and there's certainly not too late to change this. The only, I must say from just trying to, this is what we've done with Brent. We try to figure out, okay, what's the right thing and balance these things out. There would be certainly no reason not to. I mean, most of the time when I was on patrol, my rifle was pointing downward. But having no rifle in the picture you'd have to change entirely what you're trying to depict. Being a dead soldier rather than a soldier that's actually on patrol.
Pointing down is way better than pointing up.
I know, I'm just asking, what would you suggest? I'm looking for your ideas of what would be acceptable.
I actually was looking at the picture that you included in the presentation where you have the map and then you have 4 pictures inlaid. And in that one, both soldiers are carrying guns. One is on his back and the other one is pointed down.
It would be very easy.
That one, just go, boop, boop.
Not there?
Nope. Go to the one where it's keep one more.
There.
That, nope, yeah, that
Okay.
upper right one.
Yeah, that's a memorial. I think that's the one in Houston. So yeah, it would be, frankly, these have to be custom made, each of these statues. So we are in the beginning stages of telling the artist exactly what we want, what they're going to be carrying, their pose, all of that. That'd be very easy to do.
So,
if you think it'd be acceptable to have the rifles pointing downward or being held a different way, I don't particularly see an issue with that.
I don't think you can have a war memorial without a gun
Right.
carried by a soldier, but in this picture, the way they're carrying it, to me,
It's not threatening.
It's not threatening. Right. I do have one technical question, and my dad also is a Vietnam vet, and
Wow.
the flagpoles, they're the same height. Is that
That's appropriate.
appropriate? Okay,
Yeah, the American flag will be on the
perfect.
stage right, which is appropriate. The American soldier be on the right, as you're facing, as stage right, the panel will be the American. soldier.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
I don't have a question so much as maybe a clarification for folks that might be listening in. This memorial is being donated to the city.
Yes.
All we're doing is providing the land and some coordination with city staff to get this done. So I just, if someone's looking at the number and thinking, why is the city spending this money? We're not spending this money. We just have a good spot for this, I think. And so I appreciate that you honestly brought this opportunity to us. We've got a Veterans Memorial there now, and I think it's a great spot that we can use to kind of enhance recognition of all the different veterans from a variety of different conflicts that we might have in the city and in the region. So
I appreciate, not only, I literally appreciate every feedback, every comment you've made. I really do. I'm sorry. I appreciate that specifically because I forgot to mention, we actually showed this. The Vietnamese Americans do a commemoration event on April the 30th of every year, commemorating the fall of Saigon. It's certainly not a celebration. It's a very somber, very meaningful ceremony. And we did at the one on April the 30th recently, we showed a model of this. Did not plan on asking for donations and raised $150,000 that night without asking for anything. So we have no question about the money being raised. They raise funding for different projects. It's $80,000, $90,000 as Tammy will tell you. What they do for veterans and for others in this community is amazing, really. So it's a good point. There's no question about the funding. That's all. And I appreciate you saying
I
that.
just wanted to make sure folks knew
Yeah.
that this is a donation to the city, that we're not using tax money for this.
Yes.
John.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm looking forward to having this installed into our city, and thank you for honoring those who served and that were there. War is not pretty, war is ugly. And your presentation that I believe you said you've already ordered, the statues, those depict something that is ugly, that is painful, that is a memory, but yet honors those who were there. If you can change it a little bit, please do, I guess, to honor those that are asking those questions. But I understand that you are representing something and memorializing something that is ugly and painful, but yet very touching to all of us. Thank you. Brent, I have a couple questions regarding the actual structure. For example, those walkways. We are doing a bunch of work at the top, the main memorial. The walkways that are being put in, is there going to be continuity? Is it going to be the same type of walkway in the whole area? Or is there going to be a big difference between the walkways that are in the main structure versus this segment of the memorials?
So the only difference between the sidewalk, they'll all be sized the same way. It'll be concrete, probably 5 feet wide. The new sidewalk going up to the refurbished Veterans Memorial, the top will have bands of bricks. The donor bricks that we're removing from the existing memorial will be placed in bands on the walkway approaching the Veterans Memorial, but other than that, they'll be all.
So it's all concrete then and consistent width and all the rest. So I'm taking then it'll be ADA accessible in the sense of the widths and the slopes and all the rest.
Yes.
Trees, any specimen trees coming out, anything, you've done a survey, you've looked at what we're taking out and
Not, well, we haven't brought in the arborist yet because we wanted to get the approval from council before we move forward with staking it and starting to work on the.
it's
grading
mostly
plan.
pines as far as
Correct.
as
It
far as I
is.
remember. I'm
Very
just
young pines. Yeah.
Yeah, looking at all the drawings, the lighting, I'm guessing is going to be subdued compared to the main memorial lighting might be a little brighter, where this one's going to be a little bit subdued. To me, it looked like the Vietnam Wall when it comes to the slabs, the nighttime lighting on those slabs will remind me of the Vietnam War, lighting, and the lighting then on the statues hopefully remind me of the Korean lighting in the sense of the way they're lit. Is that there's gonna be dimly lit? Is that Sir John? Is that how you're seeing those statues and the lighting? It's gonna be dimmer than the main light. I guess Brent would know the main lighting. I'm guessing the lighting of this project is gonna be relatively dim.
LED. It is. Up lighting. And Brent has already, we already discussed. We don't make the light fixtures match.
You mind answering in the microphone? I'm sorry, so
Yeah,
people
yeah,
can hear
sorry.
you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. So there'll be LED lighting with easily replaceable components in case they burn out. There'll be the lighting fixtures will match what you currently have or what you're planning to have with the other monuments, so it looks the same. It'll be low level lighting just to show where people can see it when they're there.
Okay.
We're not anticipating having a bright area lighting over the memorial. I don't think that's appropriate, and we hadn't planned on that, so.
Correct. I just, from what I saw of your video and what I saw of the photos, it looked like it was
Yes.
a dimmer nighttime lighting, and the way the curve of the sidewalk goes, when you look up past the statues, you'll be looking into trees. So you're not going to see directly up into the main memorial, but the curve will.
You can see it from the memorial. The pines that are there are tall enough. There's not a lot of low level shrubs there.
Right.
You can see the main memorial there. In fact, one of the images of, even though it was just a rendering of the video, you could actually see through the area between the walls and see the existing memorial.
Got it.
And the side entrance into the existing plaza of the existing memorial, there's a staircase there. There's already stairs there. So the ADA is from the street side up.
Got it.
And the ADA for the existing memorial is from that street side up. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah. There's steps between, at the top of that long curving 5-foot sidewalk.
Okay.
So people that want to come to the other memorial, they will come in the existing entrance. That's ADA compliant. If they want to go to this memorial, they will come from the street or the parking area down at that area. That's ADA compliant, getting to the memorial.
Well, Brent, just me, I'm not sure that's that's allowed. I would prefer that everything be ADA compatible if we're building it and we're able to replace the steps. Brent will take a look at that aspect later, but
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
So just not to put too fine a point on it, but when you see the layout right there, the sidewalk going from the plaza, the Vietnam Memorial Plaza to the street, there's actually a break in the middle of that because ADA says you can have as much as 20 feet
Mhm.
of 12-to-1 ratio. Then you have to have a flat area of 5
Correct.
feet.
Landing.
That's
right.
that's in the plan.
All right, sir. I appreciate it. I look forward to having this installed. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for your comments, questions.
Go ahead, Joe.
John, again, thank you so much, John. Jay, had conversation with you several months ago, and Jay, so I really appreciate the work you've come forward with and having a great team together, and the funding is awesome, and I think it's a win-win. I look forward to conservatively say next Memorial Day.
Yes.
That'll all be out there that we'll be able to really commemorate and have that recognition. So I appreciate that. And it's how people are holding their weapon. I use the word weapon, not gun. Some of you Army guys might know the difference between the two, but I'll leave it for those.
I know that.
So anyway, but yeah, that was at the natural, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Just to clarify again, you said this was going to be the 7th one. What is the difference? What is unique about this that makes it number 7 in the United States?
Well, I can't speak to what the design was on each of those. I will tell you that
But I mean, you said this can't be only the 7th Vietnam Memorial in the United States.
it is. It is only the 7th memorial in the United States that honors both
Vietnamese
Vietnamese
and American, the joint. That was
There are
not there.
tons of,
Tons.
I'm
Okay.
almost embarrassed to say this. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of memorials honoring Vietnam veterans, which is wonderful. But there's not going to be any in Vietnam today honoring the South Vietnamese soldiers who gave their lives for freedom. This will be the 7th one in this country that honors both
For the joint.
Vietnamese.
Thank you.
and
That's what,
Americans. Yes.
thank you.
Thank
That's
for
what
the
I think we also need to make clear, because I think that's, I don't know,
Makes it unique.
makes it unique and cool.
First, I'd just like to thank you and all the veterans here for your service to the country and your continued service to the community and your fellow veterans. It means a lot. I'm personally looking at these renderings. I think the timing's perfect as we're getting ready to do renovations to our own memorial there. And what you presented dovetails so nicely with what we have there. It complements, it doesn't detract from. In fact, I think that the monument you're proposing here will probably draw more attention to our existing monument and get greater recognition for all those who serve their country. So I look forward to this. I think it's a fitting tribute and can't wait to see it built. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I really appreciate your efforts, and I think this is fantastic. I appreciate you taking the feedback about how the weapons are held. And I just have a really strange question. On the page that has like the pencil drawing with the elevation. Yes, you see where it says 5-foot path connection? What are those little things supposed to be? Are they lights, or I just want to make sure that
5-foot path,
Oh.
5-foot concrete wall.
right. Okay.
That's what that is right there in
Okay.
this picture.
Okay.
All the walks are 5 feet wide.
Right. I just couldn't figure out. It almost looks like birds or something. What are they, bushes? I just wanted to make sure they weren't something. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing like something concrete.
Those are supposed to be bushes.
And then, right,
I
okay,
didn't
thank
draw
you.
that.
Right, that's fine. And I can't interpret it. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't like little statues, which if that was part of your design would be fine. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing a feature. I think it is all very well done. I love the connectivity, the images looking up or looking down. I think that's fantastic. I think this is a great use of this space. It already has a solemn purpose. At the moment, this actually would be much more accessible than our monument or our memorial. When is our renovation starting? Do we know yet?
It's on the street. So
Okay.
I'll be bringing a contract to you guys.
Okay.
come up with
And
that.
our goal is to have ours more open as well, because right now it doesn't feel It's not really available for people that want to sit. I mean, they can sit, but they can't be surrounded by. We look forward to hearing about your progress. This is an extremely generous donation to our community. We will be proud to host it. And again, I think it fits in really nicely with the space. I know we're going to preserve as many trees as we can, because also the shade is necessary about 8 months of the year here to, for people to really be able to enjoy it. And we look forward to working with you further. And so Brent, what do you need from council tonight?
This is primarily a discussion item tonight.
Okay.
So we'll bring it back on June 12th.
Right.
For you guys to approve it in either business or on consent.
And what you need our approval is to accept the donation.
Yes,
Okay,
and I've already worked with Richard Plato to work on how we would accept that donation.
and Ken, right? Our attorney. Okay. Council, do you have a preference for, are you comfortable consent? All right, consent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I
Okay,
want to thank you again. My wife says I talk too much, and I probably do. I met Trammy about 3 or 4 years ago, and this is a dream that she had at that time. And at the time, I thought this is a huge dream.
right.
And it's a thrill for me personally and professionally to be a part of this project. And thank you so much. There was no place I'd rather have this than in Dunwoody. So
Well,
thank
we
you.
feel very honored. I think I speak for everyone up here. Thank you. And just in case anyone in the audience doesn't know what consent agenda means, it's an agenda where we put it on, not anticipating further discussion. So we will vote for you'll see we have a consent agenda on the agenda tonight, but we will vote on all the items, the consent agenda at once. So just so everyone understands. All right, next. Do you read these, Sharon? Is that what happens? Oh, yeah, we're on to the public hearings.
Mr. Attorney, Mr. Bernard,
Ken,
Mr. Bernard, it's me.
Mhm.
So I'm on number 2 for the public hearing. I'm just going to say it's a business item, honestly, correct? And we'll just say hearing on consideration of suspension or revocation of alcoholic beverage license for Walmart number 2360, located at 4725 Ashford Dunwoody Road, Dunwoody, Georgia 30338. Licensee Stepan Demos Nema, license number 4327.
okay.
This
And-
is a de novo hearing.
Wait one
pursuant
second,
to-
Ken, I'm sorry. We're gonna take 1 second and let everyone who wants to leave so we can continue on with our agenda. We appreciate everyone's service and we'll just give everyone a moment as they exit so that this matter can have everyone's full attention. You're welcome. Thank you. Right, every July 4th. Right. Oh, yeah, Monday, Memorial Day. Okay. All right, I think we have cleared out enough. One more second, humor me, please. All right, with that, Mr. Bernard, you can continue, maybe start over with what you were saying.
Well, you've read into the record.
Yes, she's read
We're
into
on
the-
number 2, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Number 2 is really a hearing in front of the public. It's not a public hearing.
Right.
There will be no audience participation. And the city code is a de novo hearing where the evidence comes from the participants in the actual hearing. So little misnomer, but it's correct. It's supposed to be an open meeting.
okay. Mr. Riley is our solicitor and you're going to take the lead on this item.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you very much. I am Bill Riley. I'm the city prosecutor, and one of my tasks is to represent the city manager in administrative hearings. There was a hearing before the alcohol license review board previously where both Walmart and Total Wines were they had violations of underage sales. Neither of those two entities, and I'll speak directly to Walmart, but I'm going to speak on both of them because they both have the same fact pattern. both of these entities did not appear for the hearing. And so if we went forward with the hearing because the clerk had appropriately noticed them by certified mail, everything was done as it was required, but they did not have an opportunity to present any mitigation in the matter. Subsequent to that time, both of these entities filed notices of appeal, which it would require a de novo. That would be a brand new hearing in front of the city council instead of in front of the board. After they filed that notice, we came into discussions, and in each of the cases, we have worked out a consent on each of these cases. I believe that the consents are reasonable in both of these cases and represent what would have been the board's determination had they heard the mitigation previously. And or at least they would have considered these as appropriate actions. I don't know that they're the only actions that they might have taken, but they certainly would have been appropriate. In the Walmart case, I have entered into negotiations, and we have for your consideration a consent agreement where that they waive all the hearings of tonight, all evidentiary presentations for tonight. They also waived their right of appeal to the Superior Court of DeKalb County, which they would have a right to do if they had an adverse finding here. Originally the board suspended them for 30 days from sale of alcohol. I have agreed with your consent and approval to a 10-day suspension. They have carved out, I believe, from July 8th till the 19th, and we would submit that we believe that would be appropriate if the mayor and council believe so. If at this time, if I could, I'd just turn it over to the defendant's attorney so they can explain to you the circumstances why they didn't appear and the actions they have taken to remediate the problems since that time.
Thank you. If you could just introduce yourself and make sure you're speaking into the microphone, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Michael Sard. I'm an attorney at Sard and Leff Attorneys. I'm here representing Walmart. I'm joined by Marshall Baycody. Marshall is the general manager of Walmart. First of all, we want to apologize that this violation occurred. It's contrary to the training that our employee received. It's contrary to Walmart's policies. And we'll tell you a little bit in a moment what happened. Also want to apologize for not having been at the Alcohol License Review Board. The reason that Walmart wasn't at the License Review Board is really a Murphy's Law kind of situation. Our registered agent, Mr. Nima, was on leave of absence for the month. He was recovering from surgery in South Florida. And so when service was attempted at his residence, he wasn't there. He wasn't at the store to receive the notice that was sent there. And no one at Walmart knew that this happened. They were unaware that the hearing was occurring. They were aware of the underage sale that occurred the previous month. So we apologize for that. And that's why we're here this evening, as Mr. Riley said, to present some mitigation for you, the opportunity that we weren't able to exercise at the Alcohol License Review Board. We don't contest that there was the underage sale, the sale of alcohol to an underage person. We take full responsibility for that happening. What our training was in place prior to this violation, Walmart's policy was that they card anyone who orders an alcoholic beverage who looks to be less than 40 years of age. That person then presents an ID. The cashier puts the ID into the point of sale system. If the person appears to be more than 40, they hit another button where they don't have to put in the ID, and the transaction continues. So this is what was happening before the violation. That is trained to Walmart staff through a computer training module. The module replicates a transaction. So the clerk, before they even ever work as a cashier, they are doing a transaction involving alcoholic beverages on the computer. And our employee in this case, she'd been an employee for just over a year. She had taken her initial training. She was due to take her follow-up annual training just shortly after this occurred. So she didn't have her second training, and she sold to an underage person. This, of course, came to the attention of the store. Within a week, Walmart had changed its policy at this particular store. Its policy is now to card anyone tries to purchase an alcoholic beverage. They have to present identification. The date of birth is put into the point of sale system. The point of sale system tells you whether or not the person is of age and whether to complete the transaction. And if the person presents an ID with a date of birth that shows that they're underage, the transaction ceases, the POS system locks up. A manager has to come to the point of sale system, unlock it, and then finish that transaction without the alcoholic beverage. So this is the improvement that we've made. We've also changed our signage almost within that 1 week. The signage that had been previously said that if you looked at less than 40, you have to provide ID. The signage now shows that if you're purchasing alcoholic beverages, you've got to present identification. So that's where we're at. Mr. Riley actually stated our position of waiving the evidentiary hearing and waiving our right to appeal. We've signed our consent agreement with Mr. Riley that we'll present to the clerk. We appreciate your support of this consent agreement. Mr. Bacotti is here as well to answer questions.
All right, Councilman Harris.
I move to approve the consent agreement as presented by the solicitor and incorporate the terms laid out in the written consent agreement approved by the solicitor verbatim.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Harris, second by Councilman Lambert. Any questions or clarifications? John.
Thank you for coming in front of us and doing your due diligence. I hope this doesn't happen again. We had a suspension previously on some other location, and they actually went and sold all their alcohol at half price prior to suspension. Does Walmart have any intention of selling anything at half price or reducing your alcohol to get rid of your inventory prior to your prohibition of alcohol sales?
Thank you, sir. Not at all, sir. We will, we've accepted responsibility, and the responsibility is on us and all the inventory that we have. I mean, obviously we can't sell it. We won't sell it until we're allowed to again, if so do so.
Thank you, sir. That's my only question. Appreciate it.
Well, seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Riley, I think Sharon has to read again, and then Mr. Riley.
The next item is consideration of suspension or revocation of alcoholic beverage license for Total Wine and More, 124 Perimeter Center West, Dunwoody, Georgia, 30338. Licensee Tabitha Favors, license number 3751.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the other case that I spoke to you about. This is Total Wine. They're actually, the actual name, I believe, is Georgia Fine Wines LLC, doing business as Total Wine and More. We are in the same posture in terms of they did not come. I believe that their attorney is going to explain to you that because there was a state hearing that there was a bit of confusion and they didn't realize that they would have a hearing at the city as well. We have negotiated in that instance also. In that instance, we had discussed a suspension. They originally had gotten a 3-day suspension from serving alcohol or selling alcohol, and they appealed also. They came to us and we were amenable to a 2-day weekend suspension in this matter, which was consistent with what I thought the amelioration would be, because but then they came and put forward an opportunity. They said, we will forego our profits for those 2 days if we can maintain the business open for the purpose of not having to let their employees lose 2 days of pay. So I believe in their business is dissimilar from Walmart's because they don't have any kind of sales that they could do to maintain their employees to allow them to work. And they would have just had to give them 2 days off without pay. Instead, they've determined that they will take the profits that they would have made and they will have they'll have the ability to carry the overhead and pay their employees, which I agreed to. They came up with a number of $5,000. I have looked at those figures. I believe that is a reasonable calculation of what their profits would have been. And so I did, when I determined it appeared reasonable to me, I agreed to give them basically what we have given an electronic copy of the consent order to the clerk. It said within the breast of the clerk's office. And with the substance of it all is they waive any further, they waive all the evidentiary issues. They waive any presentation of evidence in this matter. They consent that they have failed to, they sold alcohol. They consent that there was the board hearing and it was appropriate. And the difference will be, and they waive further appeals. The case would be, they would pay within 14 days, $5,000 into the treasury of the city. And their failure to do so would then kick in the 2-day suspension that we would have been offering them previously, and they would be suspended for a weekend if the 2 days without any further notice after they failed to pay it within 14 days. I don't believe that would happen, but that is the fail safe in this issue. So it still represents a 2-day suspension, but you are abating the suspension upon the payment of the money profits that they would have made so that the employees may continue to work and not lose 2 days of pay. That was our reasoning behind that. And I'll turn it over to the defense attorney so that he may explain the mitigation and the things that they have done.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Max Hess. I'm representing Georgia Fine Wine LLC, doing business as Total Wine and More at the Dunwoody store. That's accurate. Our general counsel based in Maryland received the notice of the board hearing, but confused it with a notice that was received from the state of Georgia Revenue Department, where there was also a citation and a hearing pending. They thought it was the communication from the Revenue Department about scheduling that hearing, and they just screwed up. So they were unaware that the board was having a hearing. They were certainly aware of failing the compliance check itself because we'd gotten a citation from the state. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what our training consists of and the programs we have in place, what we did in this instance. So all employees are trained at hiring, and then they are retrained on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, there's new training. We have signage, we have automatic shutdown. So if a person is carded who has an ID that's under age, or even if it's over age, a couple of years above a lawful sale, the system shuts down and the manager has to come over and double check. We have computer-based module training. We have in-person training. We have something that's very unique, and that is we have a compensation system where cashiers are given extra money every time they ask for an ID. And they get more money as the age goes down. So all of those things were in place in this instance, and the particular individual who made the sale got all of this training as well. We have another system that's called Teatro, where employees can monitor one another and communicate with one another. And that system did not work in this instance because when the sale happened, nobody was around this particular cashier. Normally, other people can see that person looks underage, the cashier is having a poor day, they can communicate with one another, with managers and with one another. And in this instance, no one was around when the compliance check happened. There is a policy in place that a cashier is subject to termination in such a case. And that's what happened here. After the store investigated, the individual was terminated. We are asking for a fine in lieu of suspension, and that is because this store unlike others, doesn't sell other kinds of products. Basically, it's a beer and wine store. So if there were a suspension for the suggested 2 days, the employees would have to go home and they would suffer a loss of wages. So we looked at what we make in the way of profit on a weekend. Our big day is Saturday, and then one of the other days, the amount is about the same. So we have offered to pay that amount in a fine. It comes to $5,000 so that we don't have to ask everyone to stay home. And that's what I have for you today.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harris.
I move to approve the consent agreement as presented by the solicitor and incorporate the terms laid out in the written consent agreement approved by the solicitor verbatim.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Harris and second by Councilman Lambert. Is there any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, just a nod kind of approval. I'd like us to direct the 5 staff to take the $5,000 fine and apply it towards the police department for alcohol and drug mediation activities. Chief is back there, you know of which I speak, right? Yes, he's nodding. So does anybody disagree with that assessment? No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I just confirm Sharon's got an electronic copy of that agreement that's been signed?
She does have the electronic copy.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're on to consent agenda. Does anyone have questions about the 2 items that are on there? John?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the minutes of May 8th in section 5 under the public hearing, or actually council comments for the JCC. I raised a couple questions regarding the boundaries of the project and whether it was excluding the assisted living facility, where the minutes basically say that the applicant and staff answered questions of council regarding sound mitigation. It doesn't mention my comments regarding the JCC, so I'd like to have that added.
Okay, so that's an we'll amend
I'm
the,
happy for a friendly amendment.
okay, we don't have a motion yet. So why don't you just make the motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the minutes to include my comments regarding item 5 on the JCC, where I asked about the boundaries of the project, whether or not it was excluding the assisted living facilities.
I think you have to make a motion to the consent agenda. Somehow it has to be part of consent too, right? Doesn't really matter. It's fine. Just somebody second it.
Second.
Any further discussion on John's motion?
So Madam
Yeah.
Mayor, so for purpose of the record, essentially the motion is to approve the consent agenda
Okay.
with the additional comments that Councilman Hennigan has just said.
All right,
Agreed.
John, got it?
Got it.
Everybody okay with that change? All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I call the question on the consent agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Next, Sharon, I think, oh, sorry. Turn off the sound. Whenever you're ready, Sharon, to read it, I think.
Item number 6 under business items is consideration of the Path Foundation Master Plan for Trails, Richard McLeod and Greta DeMaio.
And Nico Shem. So
Okay.
also join us. All right, we have worked for the last 9 months on this. We awarded the contract in the fall of 2022 to Path Foundation. They have worked over that time. We've held 4 meetings with the working group that was made up of citizens, staff, and members of the PICD. In addition, they've held public events at Fight Up Dunwoody and held 2 public input sessions and had 2 public surveys. We collected several hundred comments. The staff had received from the mayor and council our comments from the April 24th hearing, or excuse me, not hearing, presentation. Those comments were passed on to the Path Foundation. We addressed most of them. So the working group recommends that you all approve this plan, but I'll leave it to Greta to go over the changes that they made.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's nice to be back and looking forward to kind of just walking you through some of the high level revisions from our meeting and your input from April. I'm assuming everybody's got the latest, greatest document. You've been able to review this. So I didn't put a lot in the presentation for tonight, but as we go through, let me get this going. The revised implementation phases is one thing that we heard from you. Yes.
Is there something on the screen we should be seeing? Because we're not, sorry.
Yeah, they're controlling back there.
Oh, so are they getting it?
Is there supposed to be?
Sorry, I can see it here.
We're working on it, Madam Mayor. I apologize.
Never works. Here, ever. Not to be bitter. Right.
I can always talk without visuals too,
Yes.
but it's always helpful to see the visuals.
It is. We'll give it another minute.
Okay.
Ginger, do you have an update?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. We have to get the VIA code. We're working on it. I apologize.
There's no other way to share it.
The great thing is, I think everyone was so good about reviewing it and giving us your feedback, even talking through it. I think you'll know what revisions we made.
We'll give it one more
Okay.
minute, just
Yeah,
for the audience,
trying one more time.
because the audience, it looks like maybe,
Okay.
right? They can see it, we can't, ironically. Right? It's up there. So Ginger, did you hear that? They can hear it they can see it on the monitors in the audience, but we cannot see it.
Yes, they can go ahead. We're working. I just have to get the VIA code. I apologize. Michael's working on it.
Okay. What does it look like that you're presenting? Is it the plan we have in our packet, or is this something different?
Well, it's one of the maps. So in the master plan, you have the implementation section. And so
Okay.
if you were to turn to page 59.
Yes, that we can do.
That would show you some of the revisions we made to the implementation phases that include removal of the recommendation of a model project. It took phase one, which is your city's programmed projects, is what the implementation shows is phase one. Phase two had a little bit of shifting. We moved, if you were to look at project W3, Oh, and she got rid of my notes now and I don't have them. Can you see it?
Do you know that?
No, okay.
Crazy.
Sorry, I haven't memorized all of the trail segment numbers and codes that we moved around.
She's got a hard copy.
Yeah. Richard probably knows it like the back of his hand. I'll get there. Hold on.
You should be able to present your screen now. I apologize, everyone.
Nope, wrong presentation.
There we go.
Oh, right. Go back to the,
Yeah. There it is.
right.
Okay.
Is that what you need it?
No,
That's the plan.
Yep.
There it is. There it is.
It's not highlighting it. There you go.
Okay.
So just to recap, we revised the implementation phase, which is the chapter within the master plan document number 4. It removed the recommendation of a model project. So your master plan does not have a model project recommendation. We put your phase 1 projects for implementation are the city's current programmed projects, followed by your phase 2, which is the 10-year prioritization segments. We moved W3, C8, both of those trail projects to phase 2. And then phase 3, which is your long range segments, we moved the N9 down to phase 3. Oh, it walks you through there. So that kind of shows you a little bit of where each one of those is located. Okay, in addition, we removed the proposed spur connection to Brook Farm. We removed the section crossing into City of Doraville. We're working also with the City of Doraville. We knew that that portion would be done within their city limits, but it's also the coordination between the two projects when that does happen, and they are aware of that. We removed the concrete path reference in the Nature Center, the Dunwoody Nature Center east of the boardwalk. Replacement to Meadow Creek Lane. So that is your N1 and N2 segments. Those are left in the master plan mapping, but the description has been revised to note removal of the reference of any hard surface trail. We've added reference of city-approved list of planting materials into your design standards, chapter 5. We also have added the life of a trail project language into the introduction. With that, that is your Dunwoody Trail Network Master Plan. On page 19 kind of is your summary graphic showing the mapping and everything that's being proposed. So with that and your consideration and the support of the working group, we would ask for your adoption of the master plan so that city staff could move forward with implementation.
So if it's okay with council, I'll just take a second to highlight something that I think is in the life of a path, the project, but what page was that? Thank you. I don't, yes. So just so we're all clear on how this works. Like every city project we've done, every city plan we've done, the transportation plan, for example, has it's 95 projects. And each project, as it becomes a priority for a council, goes through a cycle of predictability. We ask the public for input, like we've done at Womack and Mount Vernon, at Tilly Mill and North Peachtree, at Georgetown Gateway, which was in that project's case was a really long time ago. And then we came back and asked for some more. Then we, council has to approve whatever the plan is. The engineering and design they don't come right now. So we have 95 projects in our transportation plan, which was approved years ago. We only engineer and design as we approach the beginning of that project, and we work with the public and we notify the neighbors and have meetings with the neighbors. There's a lot of opportunity for public input. And then there's a whole other line of stuff that has to happen for construction of a project, even one that is perfectly designed will often require utility movements. Most of our public works projects are also water shed related. We move pipes out of the road. That's a really big thing to do, so that when a pipe bursts, ultimately it's not in the middle of a road. It's often under, or maybe it is in the middle of the road. I could be getting this all wrong, but we replace the aging infrastructure. So DeKalb County's pipes that the city was built on are almost all 50 plus years old, 60 at this point. Yeah, because 60s, maybe even 70. And so we take every opportunity to try to only dig once. So projects like the Georgetown Gateway, which is taking a really long time, it's really much more than what you're seeing above ground. It's a lot related to what's happening underground. And we are fortunate that we can do the watershed work now because it will have to be done eventually. So there is a process by which every single public works and really parks project occurs. And so I just want to be clear before we talk about this, that none of this. I also want to make the point, if it's okay with council, that our projects that we have already, the first phase of this plan is not going to happen overnight. So we are easily, I don't want to overestimate or underestimate, a decade from phase 2. At least, because the infrastructure I don't know if all of you are aware that it can take 18 months to move a utility pole. And so these things take time. We could have all the money in the world and they would still take time. So with that, I open it up for discussion and questions. Anybody? Stacy.
I just have one question because somebody brought it up in public comment with the Calm Streets, and the North Springs Drive is due to be repaved in 2023, and it is listed as a Calm Street in the path plan. Is that something that could actually happen in 2023?
Just to point out that it's the W4 if for anybody look at this map.
I suppose it could happen. Even if it didn't, though, we could pave the street, and what would be entailed in a calm street would probably be on top of the pavement. So I don't think the two have to go hand in hand.
But back to the mayor's point, with the life of a trail project, as that moves forward, I would encourage you to really look at those opportunities and try to, work with the neighborhoods and see what really is needed.
And does like if a street has sidewalks on both sides, which North Springs does, I think, what does it need then to make it a calm street? Like what improvements does it need if I'm just asking.
So within the master plan, your design standards
Right.
kind of outline what a calm street is. It typically is striping and signage, some elements that you could put in place depending on the existing conditions, any of the concerns that the neighbors have with cut through traffic, where you're trying to route bike ped and make it more of a neighborhood, connection, not just a vehicular connection.
Yeah. Okay. And again, that would entail a conversation with the neighborhood, right?
It would.
Okay. All right. John.
Thank you for the presentation. In fact, I'd love to have council get a copy of that presentation. We, I guess, missed it in the packet. I like the idea of paths. I like the idea of wider sidewalks and mobility for both pedestrians and bicycles. But I prefer reasonable sidewalks everywhere. I understand the life of the project and how it's going to be coming in front of council and all the rest, but it also, this plan sets standards. And in 10 years, I won't be here, so I want to make sure I discuss some of the things that I'm not 100% happy with in this plan. I lobbied against the 10-foot minimum width when it comes to paths. I think it's unfair that 10-foot paths in front of single-family homes will be, part of this plan. I don't think that's appropriate. I wish council or the Path Foundation found a way to put in the plan some objectivity and some changes. I'm worried that the 10-foot paths are going to eat up all of the right of way with little or no space for shade, greenery, or beauty. I'm worried about, in order to make these paths, put them into place, that we are going to shrink the streets. One of the reasons that Mount Vernon Road has bike paths on both sides is really for safety. When you think about it, when 285 gets shut down, Mount Vernon is the main thoroughfare across the city of Dunwoody. Right now, when there's gridlock, it allows those bike paths on the side, allow those cars to both go to the right and to the right, and allow emergency vehicles down the middle. I'm worried that in order to put the paths on Mount Vernon or anywhere else, that we are going to be thinking about reducing the street width, which would then reduce the safety for the main emergency vehicles coming through our streets. I'm worried about that. I've talked to a number of the residents. I've gotten lots of emails, and I've called a few of them. Some of them I know, and I've called them and I said, were you aware that we want to put 10-foot wide sidewalks in front of people's houses? And they weren't aware of that. They, like me, like the idea of paths. They like the idea of mobility. They like the idea, the philosophy of putting these paths in, as I do too. But again, it's the technical aspects of some of these plans that I'm not 100% happy with. One resident said, hey, it's going to be on the other side of the street. I'm like, wait a second. That's great for you, but it's not great for them. I worry about those residents who's going to have this infrastructure put down their throat, whether they want it or not. I worry about that. Some vocal residents have complained about certain paths and where they're located, and they have lobbied us and said, we don't want a path in this location, and those paths have gotten removed. Now, and there's a number of communities or path locations where the community has not lobbied us, has not been vocal, and now those are going to be in the path plans for people to worry about 10 years from now. I worry about that. I have policy concerns over the calm streets. Michael Smith, our public works director, just came up and said, yeah, it's possible to do this and do that. But right now, the policy of our traffic calming is in direct conflict to these calm streets. If we were to put calm streets on a street that was just about to be paved, it's in conflict with our speed policy. Is there speeding on that street? Is there residents that have voted for that calm street? Are the residents ready to pay the upcharge in order to get the speed humps put in? So these are a number of issues where conflicts of this policy is in direct conflict with other policy that council has already decided about and voted on, and we have not modified. So now we have things in conflict. Calm streets also show that they're going to be have sidewalks. There's a number of streets where residents have paid for calm streets for traffic calming, but yet there's no sidewalks on either one of those streets, on some of those streets now. Is this council ready to put sidewalks everywhere that we have traffic calming in place? If we approve this, maybe we should then modify and start putting sidewalks in where traffic calming is in place, where the residents have paid for that traffic calming because of the speeding that's already happening. Finally, I've mentioned a couple items. One is the Nancy Creek. There's a trail that goes right along the creek where I have residents in my community that flood on an almost yearly basis, but yet we want to put a 12-foot or 10-foot impervious concrete right next to their house, right next to the path. And I am worried on things like that, that this path plan is in place and has not taken into consideration any type of flood control or even talk to the residents abutting that property. I'm worried about things like that. Again, I think paths are great. I was one of the main proponents for that path in Brook Run Park. I pushed for that. It's appropriate 12 feet of concrete. Sometimes I don't think it's appropriate to have 10 feet of concrete in front of single family homes. I worry about that. Thank you.
Councilman Lambert.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a bunch of things I initially wanted to say about this, about the trail plan. But I really decided to focus more on what this plan is, and just as importantly, what it is not. And so I'm going to start with what it's not. And in this section, I'm going to probably echo a lot of things the mayor talked about. So this is not a construction-ready document. Adoption of this plan does not approve a single segment of trail for construction. There are no bulldozers lined up outside of City Hall, ready to hit the streets tomorrow and start building these trails. Nor does it allocate a single dollar in city funding to any of these projects. Each individual segment of trail in this master plan will need to be designed and engineered during a process that will include community engagement and feedback and require city council approval. Any community members with questions or concerns on individual trail segments will have ample opportunity to be a part of that final design process and discussion. And I think it's important to understand why. We're a city that's built out. Every single one of these trail segments is unique. There's no one size fits all to this. We can't say this is what we're going to do everywhere, because everywhere it will not apply. There's going to be individual circumstances that we will need to work through as a community together with residents and council and staff, and figure out what is the most appropriate solution in those individual areas. So what is a master plan? Well, a master plan is a dynamic, long-term planning document, the purpose of which is to provide a conceptual layout to guide future growth and development. Effective master plans create a long-term vision and a roadmap on how to achieve it. The Dunwoody Trail Master Plan is all about connectivity. It identifies key destinations and how to most effectively connect as many residents as possible to those destinations via a thoughtfully developed network of trails. Destinations are both within the city, so places such as parks, entertainment, dining, civic, shopping, schools, neighborhoods, among others. And they are outside of the city. Things like Path 400, the Atlanta Beltline, the Peachtree Creek Greenway, the Chattahoochee Riverlands, and the Silver Comet, just to name a few. So whether you wish to walk to Dunwoody Village or bike to the Krog Street Market, ride all the way to Alabama state line on the Silver Comet Trail, or simply take your family to the park, the Dunwoody Trail Master Plan aspires to provide our residents a safe route to reach your destination. Trails have been identified as a top priority for Dunwoody in every plan and community survey the city has completed since incorporation. But simply calling something a priority is not enough. And a plan to specifically address trails in our city is long overdue. Now listen, this plan is a 20 to 30 year build out. There's segments of it that'll probably never get built. And there's probably segments that haven't been identified yet that we will build. The plan itself calls for revisiting in 8 to 10 years for an update. And that's the way the master planning process works, because cities evolve, cities change, things progress. And what's appropriate today may not be appropriate in 10 years. And we will learn as we begin to build this. But the master plan, adopting this master plan, is a critical first step in making all of this a reality. We've had a lot of comments on trails. Many spoke tonight in favor, some speak against, but I think it's noteworthy to point out that almost everybody that has raised concerns about the trail plan made a comment similar to, I'm not opposed to trails, but. And that's encouraging to me, because what that tells me is that even the people with concerns identify the value of having a trail system in the city. And so it's our job as a council to figure out what comes after the but. And that didn't come out right, but should have thought that one through a little better. But what's the but? What is the concern? Why does the hesitation? Because it's natural. Typically it's something that affects them personally, whether it's their property or something like that. And those are very real and natural concerns to have. But to simply dismiss an entire plan or segment of trail because some residents have concerns, I don't think is the right plan. Quite honestly, I think it's lazy. As a government, we need to do better than that. We need to serve our community better, that and the needs of the community better. I honestly feel the key is communication, is getting together through this process with our residents, drilling down, sharing information, and most importantly, listening. Listening, what are the concerns? What are the factors that give them concern and reasons that they might be opposed to something? And you know what? I'm an optimist by nature, but I believe in a lot of those circumstances, we can find a way to mitigate those concerns and create and find a solution that makes everyone maybe not happy, but maybe makes them satisfied with the final result. Who knows? In the end, we may end up with something better than exists there today. And I can say that because I've had that experience in my time on council where I've met with residents that were opposed to something. We talked through their concerns, and in the end, not only were they no longer opposed to it, they loved what we did. So I believe we can do the same thing with trails. I genuinely believe that. It isn't going to be easy. It's not always going to be easy. And in some situations, there may be cases where, you know what, that is too much of a burden on the homeowner, and maybe we can't build that segment of trail. But to dismiss an entire plan because of those few isolated incidents is not the right thing to do in my mind. So, I'm confident that we have the ability as a community to work through these details and arrive at a solution that adequately addresses the needs and concerns of everyone involved. And I enthusiastically support this plan.
Sorry. Joe, go ahead.
We had a transportation plan adopted in 2011 and 2017. And I would encourage the people, and I could reverse engineer, take a look at the 2011 and 2017 Master Comprehensive Transportation Plan and back into how did Tilly Mill North Peachtree intersection get built? It was in the 2011 or 2017 Master Transportation Plan. Do you know next year in 2024, we're going to be putting a 12-foot wide side path on the north end of Mount Vernon, approved in a plan adopted by this council already for the Tilly Mill Mount Vernon interchange. That'll be going from Jet Ferry west toward where the power lines cut through. That's already been approved by council. And that's been vetted with the neighbors over the last couple of years that live along those intersections. The city's already met with those people. Do you know the council's already approved a 12-foot wide multi-path on the north end of Mount Vernon, continuing to the west to Corners Drive? That was presented to council 2 years ago in a concept plan, and it's approved and adopted in a 2027 SPLOST funding cycle. So the thing is that we've had pieces of this and that, a little bit here, a little bit there in a master transportation plan, which is intersections and everything else. And I said, why not have a separate path plan that has it one-stop shop? So it's a holistic viewpoint. Bring in the experts that have done this, that know they're better than us. Instead of us a little bit here, a little bit there, drip drab, let's have a holistic viewpoint, engage the citizens, have a standard, have methodologies and whatnot, right? So this master transport plan is following the same methodology as our 2011 and 2017 comprehensive transportation plan did. So look at those plans. Go and check out Tilly Mill at Mount Vernon and see that it's programmed for 2024 in our budget, something like $4.4 million for that intersection, and see what that concept plan is. Our city website is really detailed. I think it's a great website with all of our public works projects, and we further divided it up. If you go to public works, you can see the separation of where is it in right-of-way acquisition, concept design, and so on. It flows through that way. I actually asked staff to kind of orient that website so it shows you, it's just not you click and everything, you see where we are, and then you can go and pull up that. And I appreciate the Path Foundation coming into adding the implementation of showing what we currently have programmed, right? And it's up to us each year on council to look at the budget, to revise it, and as part of our annual budget allocation, where it's called our capital improvement program, CIP, where we will forecast. Every council gets to do that every year. We come back, the council who's elected up here goes back and revisits those priorities on what gets funded capital improvement. So be aware when you come out in our annual budget process, check out our capital improvement program and look at what's forecasted out there in the side here. So just wanted to note, why we are doing this, just having it in one fell swoop. And tactically, I decided because Mount Vernon seems such a critical, ridge line, you go on the weekends, you got Dunwoody Village, people want to connect. I started walking on doors and I knocked on doors on people that live on the north end of Mount Vernon. I started from Dunwoody Village and from Mount Vernon to Vermac, the houses that actually face, that look at Mount Vernon, there's 4 current homes. There was one that got torn down. And there's one that's just got sold and it's been a rental. But I knocked on the other 4. So as you start from the village, it's Derek, I knocked on the doors there of Derek and Savannah. No, I'm sorry. I'll get the names in a second here, but I knocked on the first door and I spent Craig and Katie Greer. He has a garden in the front. He understands where the right of way is and so on. And he said, you know what? I think I would like that. We have 11-year-old daughter. She doesn't want to even she doesn't feel comfortable walking on Mount Vernon because the sidewalks, there's not even a buffer. So they sent an email to council. It's on public record. They fully support the path along their front of their property. I went to the next door neighbor. It's Derek Russo. I spoke with him. He supports it. Then I went to the next, it's Keith and Yocosta Cintron. They've been here for about 10 years. And they wholeheartedly support it. And in full disclosure, I went down to 1830 Mount Vernon, David and Jennifer Jones on May 15th. They let me in their house. We spoke for over 30 minutes. They were not opposed, rather they were neutral. But they have Leyland cypresses that are growing right under the power lines. And it's kind of died out there. They live right next to the former Slup home. So they had concerns. But I said, we would talk to you just like we did every time we do a sidewalk project and so on. So I just decided to go to that extra step and knock on doors because I believe on council, it's a 4-legged stool. I can be one leg. The rest of council is another leg. The staff is a 3rd leg, but the public is the 4th leg. So I decided to go out to the public for that one and talk to actual homeowners along that site to listen to what they had. So anyway, I appreciate the timing here and so on. Thank you.
I'm trying not to go in a row. Councilman Rob Price.
Councilor Rowe, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to touch a little bit on what I think is probably the hybrid we're looking for on what points John raised and what points that Tom raised, which is that I think it's important that we have the vision of a master plan, but I think it's important that we don't let that master plan vision override the public input portion when we get to looking at individual segments, that getting feedback on those segments, on how they might be designed, on how they might be sized is critical. I'm speaking specifically here. There are a few folks that spoke about the C3 segment tonight. And specifically the western portion of that runs from Village North Court along the side of the Georgia State campus up to Womack. And to me, we need lots of public input on that to figure out what we're going to do there. There may be ways to ameliorate a lot of the concerns that those neighbors have with something that's a different size, for example, or that has a little bit different configuration. And so I'm going to support the vision of this plan, but I think as we get down the future and as we start to design these, the public input portion that Joe mentioned becomes critical to make sure that we really do listen to everybody's concerns, that we really do adjust these projects if we decide to go forward to try to ameliorate and address as many of those as possible. And then I'll just conclude with, I do like the idea of Mount Vernon being kind of a priority for this plan. It's the flattest portion of the city, and I see people actively biking and walking on that all the time. So I think a segment there would get tremendous use right off the bat. Thanks.
Councilman Harris.
I just want to thank the working group again. I know there's been a lot of tremendous amount of work that's gone into this, and these are citizen volunteers who gave a lot of their time to attend these meetings. I want to say that, just say thank you to that, and thank you to the Path Foundation for putting the life of a path, because I think that's very important. And I just want to point out, just so I understand correctly, in the life of the path, there are 2 distinct different boxes where it says public input requested. and two different boxes that require a council vote. So not only is it all spelled out, we have to do this. It's not up to us. It's what we have to do to ameliorate citizen concerns, to do the right thing, and to move our city forward. So thank you for everybody's time.
Okay. Anybody else? So I want to read from the life of so I want to start with a story. When I was first on council, I was shocked to learn that there were people who didn't want sidewalks in their front yard. The city, when we became a city, so in case any of you are not aware, DeKalb County had not invested anything in our infrastructure up until the time they didn't invest anything after we became a city either, but they hadn't invested anything. The sidewalks you saw in our community were almost exclusively built by the people who built the neighborhoods. In my neighborhood, for example, what that resulted in is there were two different builders. One builder put sidewalks in, one builder did not. The people that have been in the neighborhood for, at this point now, 60 years, can tell you one was cheap and one was not. So what that resulted in was a hodgepodge system of neighborhoods, and the first city council, of which I was not a member, prioritized safe routes to schools and sidewalks. So imagine my surprise. I was new at this. I was much younger. I was maybe a little naive to find that there were people who lived around the corner from a school and they did not want a sidewalk. I am incredibly empathetic to people's concerns about property. I'll go back to what I started this with. DeKalb County hadn't invested in our community at all, other than laying down paving the first time the road was built. And so if you lived on a busy street like Chamblee Dunwoody and you had been there for decades, you had no reason to presume that anything was ever going to change, because DeKalb County had done nothing. But the reality is that we have an obligation to make things safer. And I was surprised because I don't have sidewalks on my street, and I would love sidewalks on my street. So through the years, I've had a lot of experience with sidewalks and meeting with neighbors and meeting with Michael Smith or whoever's doing the work from Public Works and coming up with a plan that people are comfortable with. I often say that in our neighboring cities of Sandy Springs and Brookhaven, that they dig and then they show up with shovels, they start digging, and then they ask for an apology. That has never, ever been the strategy of the city of Dunwoody, ever. We repeatedly meet with neighbors. We work hard to come to a solution that people are comfortable with. We change our plans when necessary. We abandon projects when impossible. This is a plan that even if I had $1 billion to allocate today, would still take decades to build, because that is how long it takes to build public works projects. And I don't have $1 billion, by the way. So there's the financial piece of it. But when I read in the beginning of the life of a trail project, because I think it's important, I'm going to read this sentence, or two sentences, three. Anyway, it is important to note that the incorporation of a trail segment into the trail master plan is only the beginning of a project implementation process that provides multiple opportunities for community participation. Specific aspects such as final location, width, and tree selection are identified during project design. So even though the path foundation, and I looked through here and I might have missed it, but I didn't see anywhere where it said that a path has to be. Is it in here? It's the recommendations, but it's not a requirement. John raises legitimate policy questions that we need to resolve, particularly about calm streets. I might argue that calm streets, and they don't show up certainly in our plan, the first projects from us. I don't know if there's any in phase 2.
Dunwoody North.
Dunwoody in phase 2, is that gives us a long time to get to that answer, but I think it's worth discussing. I also think in many cases, given limited financial resources, calm streets are just going to be streets, because we're not going to have the financial resources to invest in streets that are already pretty quiet. There, with the point of speed bumps, we know they're contentious. There are many neighbors who across Dunwoody who reach out to me, and I'm sure y'all, and when I show them the process, they don't want speed bumps. They just want people to slow down. Traffic speed is a problem, but we are building. And so I think that this is a plan. We have a parks plan that we have changed through the years. We have a transportation plan that we will never get to all 95 projects, probably needs to be updated. We have, for those of us on my part in the Georgetown, North Springs, that part of area, we're living through the Gateway project that was literally approved 11 years ago. But also waiting with bated breath to see what the Georgia Department of Transportation is going to do with managed lanes, that that process has taken so long, they have to start over with public input. And so this is a vision, it's a plan. We have, like I said, we have a long history. Like I said, we do not just show up and start digging. That is never who we have been. And I would argue that without exception, and Michael Smith can correct me if I'm wrong, somebody on council, we have not made drainage worse in any project. We work hard to make it better because that's, like I said, we are busy piping all over Chamblee, both ends of Chamblee Dunwoody Road as we speak. So I think that I understand that change makes people nervous, and I am empathetic, but I promise you, nobody is going to show up tomorrow. I don't have any money for it anyway, that we haven't already talked to. So we mentioned that a couple of phases are ready to go. We've already met with the neighbors. We've worked with them to get agreements. And so, but otherwise, there's nothing starting tomorrow. There's nothing starting next year or this year, other than the list that is our priorities is stuff that has been in our plans since either 2011 or 17. And so I am empathetic. I think that you need to have a little confidence in the history of a city that has worked really hard. I mean, I can take you on tours of sidewalks and show you where we moved the sidewalk around a single tree, where every other city I know of would just have knocked the tree down because they're coming straight through. Because we know how, and there are also places that if you build in the right of way, it's at your own risk, I think is the word I'm looking for, peril, and they'll come in and just come right through. And we don't do that. We work really hard. I can show you lots of examples of replaced landscaping and everything else. And so this is a plan. We've had lots of public so somewhere 55% plus another 10% who said they weren't sure, said they would want a trail in their front yard in our survey. And so I think that I get it. Change is hard. I also think that change is going to come a lot slower than many of you anticipate, and that we're not building this for my generation even. So we're building it for future generations. So with that, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make one additional comment because you brought up a good point about the timeline and it taking so long. And some people might be happy with that. Some people may be discouraged by that. But, and Greta could probably talk to this better than me, but, everyone talks about the Beltline in Atlanta. Well, that plan began in 2005. So we're in year 18. So it's not just unique to Dunwoody. It's just the nature of the beast. These projects take a long time to design and to build. And there's at least another decade of projects with that. And I think the mileage is only about half of what we plan. So obviously it's not an apples to apples comparison, but just to keep everything in perspective, these projects take a long time.
Right.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Seconder. Seconded by Councilman Lambert. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
No.
That was 6-1, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Starling.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight I'm here to talk about the Womack ceramic mural. And I'm here requesting a budget allocation of $60,000 from the Hotel Motel Tourism Product Fund for 2023 to construct and install the ceramic mural. We currently have $11,000 left in the art budget. There was not savings from changing the wall. It actually costs a little bit more to prepare the wall, which we were worried that was going to happen. So that's enough for the artists. We have enough for the artists to get started this year, but not to finish and install it. So we're here asking to fund it with the hotel motel tax in 2023.
And would you like to explain why you have chosen to come to us right now related to the hotel motel tax, please?
Sure. So we just got a report on the April hotel motel tax. It is the revenue per available room is up 35% from last year. That's not from 2020, but it's from last year. So our hotel motel tax has really taken off. We've got plenty of funds in that fund. And so we think it's a good place to use this. We think it's an appropriate project. As you remember, the hotel motel fund was designated for placemaking for parks and trails in and around the perimeter center area. We believe this is a gateway sign into not only the village, but also our arts center. And so we think it's appropriate. It is Dunwoody, as you can see. So it is sort of a marketing for the city as well.
All right. Anybody have questions besides mine? This is a business action
Move to
item.
approve.
Moved by Tom, second by John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So when will it be? Oh, any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. When will it be finished?
I'm not going to answer that with the two artists
Okay.
are here. It is going to take quite a while. That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons we wanted to get started now. There's a lot of pre-preparation. This will also allow us to use that $11,000 in the art budget to fund phase 3 of the Green Light Art Project. So
Yes. Could you ask the artist to stand up?
absolutely.
Oh, there they are. I've been showing this at schools all spring and excited. So thank you. And this
Thank
is
you.
a tourism product, which is the hotel motel, why the hotel motel tax dollars is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The next item is funding authorization for Auto Code Development to construct phase 1 of the Vermac Path adjacent to Dunwoody High School. Michael Smith.
Okay, this item we discussed last meeting, and there's been a few changes since the last meeting, but we're still recommending moving forward. The right of way has been approved by the school board. The biggest change is we were talking about building from the driveway south to Womack first. But we've run into an issue with the stormwater pipe that we have to be put in being too close to one of the transmission poles for Georgia Power, which those poles they don't move those for us for free. In fact, it costs a lot of money to move those poles. So we need to avoid it. We're working on a permanent solution to resolve that conflict. But in the meantime, we're recommending moving forward with the northern end. So it would be from the south driveway up to Vanderland this summer and then come back and do the other part next summer. And we're proposing to do this under a unit price contract with Autoco and asking for funding approval of up to $420,000, which has already been budgeted in the SPOS budget.
Okay, any questions?
Just a quick question, and I'm sure you've accounted for this, but I don't know a lot about stormwater other than gravity and water flows downhill and we're starting uphill. Have we accounted for the fact of where that stormwater is going to go until the bottom collection stuff is worked out?
Yeah, there's a drainage system there now already carrying the water from the road. The new system was really just an upgrade. And it also included some capacity for a future potential sidewalk on the other side of the road. So it had extra storage built in. So the water on the northern part will have somewhere to go, and it should be fine until we can get the whole thing in.
John.
Michael, will there be any work on the opposite side of the street?
No.
Okay, so the neighbors across the street won't be affected at all?
No.
Thank you, sir. That's all I need to know.
Stacy.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Harris, second by Councilman Price. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And you're still up, Mr. Smith. Sharon has to read it though, I think. And this is gonna be great because she emails me like, I'm sure it's not her, but like it's automatic, but every morning I wake up to an email asking for this contract.
The next item is approval of an amendment to the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank GTIB agreement for the grant awarded to the West Side Connector Project. Michael Smith.
Okay, this grant has a long history that started with the West Side Connector Project concept, and I won't go through the details of that history, but where we are today is on the bigger West Side Connector project, the state has agreed to kind of take that on and study it and move that project forward, which is, you know, what needed to happen all along with it really being connected to the interstate. But we had this grant money, and last year we had an amendment to the agreement that would allow us to, you know, do the final study on the West Side Connector and then set aside some money for construction of a project. The toll authority, you know, really wanted to see the money put to something on the ground in the short term, since the bigger project is, you know, down the road. And so what we've come up with and with the purpose of this amendment is to improve the crosswalk at Hammond and Ashford Dunwoody between Ravinia and the mall. That's a two-stage crossing because the road's so wide and there's so much traffic. And the existing median there is, I think, only about 5 feet wide. This proposes to make it 10 feet wide. If you've ever seen people out there kind of waiting on this little island in the middle of the road, we're taking out one of the southbound left turn lanes so that we can increase the size of that island. There's not enough traffic turning into Ravinia there to need the 2 lanes. And so this is something that the idea that first came up back when we had the PTOP traffic operation program and perimeter. And then one of the proposed developments for Ravinia, their traffic engineer suggested this. And so, you know, we're recommending approving this amendment so this money can be allocated for that project.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? John?
I'll just ask regarding the pedestrian stop in the middle, what safety features are there? I see the big black concrete box. What's keeping the separation between the pedestrians and the cars?
You mean currently or in this?
In the plan.
In the plan. It'll be a median. It's kind of like the refuge islands we have. It's a curb median with a little nose on the end of it and then a pass-through crosswalk. So it's basically what's there today, but it's twice the width.
Okay.
So it gives them more room to stand not so close to traffic.
All right, so there's some protection from a car, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but
Right.
it's some protection. It's wider. And it's a sort of a concrete barrier to a certain extent.
Yeah, curb, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? It's a business item.
Move to approve.
Moved by John. Second by Tom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously.
The next item is the consideration of the intent to participate with DeKalb County CDBG program. Richard McLeod.
Good evening. We received a letter last week from DeKalb County.
One second, I need to explain to council that the reason that this is on the business agenda and not the discussion agenda is
They need an answer by May 31st.
right. And we got the letter last week.
Last Tuesday, yes.
Right.
So we got a letter from Michael Thurman, the CEO of DeKalb County, stating that we could participate as in the urban county for BG. mayor needs to sign a form, either yes or no. I want to point out that in the letter from the CEO, the third paragraph, it says, upon signing the cooperation agreement of intent, DeKalb County will provide your city with proper consideration to your request of essential community development needs and proposed activities. The county will have the final responsibility for selecting activities and annual filing of CDBG funds. However, your city will waive its individual entitlement to CDB.
Right, CDBG.
Yeah.
You have to say it really fast.
Yes.
CDBG.
So we can participate, we could suggest, but ultimately it's the
Right.
county who is going to make the decisions.
So, I want to talk about this for a minute because I'm the one who has to sign. And so my intention is to ask you tonight to give me, I have to figure out how I want to say it, but to give me the jurisdiction to make this decision. I need to have a conversation with the CEO. I haven't been able to yet. I'd like to suggest, so we only have one census tract, which makes it unlikely that we should hire a CDBG coordinator, which would be necessary to manage CDBG funds, or we would not necessarily hire someone, we would spend a fair amount, like, so Brookhaven recently released like their 3 or 5 year plan. So that, but they're spending $60,000 to $90,000 a year managing it, but they have a lot more poverty than we do. And they have a lot more census tracts that qualify than we do. We have one census tract. It's on the far east of the city. I'd like to share with you where I think the money should be invested, which is why I feel so passionate that I have to get the CEO on my side, which is there is on the east side of Dunwoody on the access road going south on Peachtree Industrial, which I guess would be the only access road that's in the city of Dunwoody on Peachtree Industrial. There we have a sidewalk. We have a sidewalk. In between is Doraville, and there's no sidewalk there. But the people that are impacted are almost all Dunwoody residents. And so I would like to recommend that we approve this with the or that you give me jurisdiction. I'm going to have a conversation. My suggestion would be that we invest every cent of CDBG money that we would get otherwise into that sidewalk project, even though it's in Doraville, because it's Dunwoody residents who are impacted by not having it. And then down the road, because I think it'll take multiple years of our funds. And I expect Commissioner Patrick also to put some money towards this. But down the road, when this project is finished, then a future council can make choices of how they want to handle the CDBG money. But for now, when you look at a big need in that census tract that fits sort of the parameters of CDBG spending, this part of the sidewalk, that Doraville isn't gonna, they're not even eligible for CDBG because there are only 10,000 people, you have to be 50,000. That while it's important to them, it's not their top priority. And so I'd like your support on that initiative to complete that part of the trail, but mostly that we word the message in such a way that I have discretion in whether we proceed or not, if that's okay with council. And then I'm going to call your sister. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I wholeheartedly agree. That segment between Homeland and Tilly Mill in the city of Doraville has been needing sidewalk for quite a while. And we have, I have emails going to previous mayor and the current mayor of Doraville talking about it. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to use these relatively small funds to put towards this improvement that really is for the citizens of Dunwoody that are walking between Tilly Mill, which is a bus route, and they walk, along the bushes, along the highway, in the dirt, to get to the apartments in the city of Dunwoody. So I think this is a fabulous suggestion, wholeheartedly, approve. And however the motion needs to be read, I totally agree with the funds to be put towards this purpose.
Tom.
Yeah, thank you. So echo what John said, I agree with this project being important for our residents. I would like to get clarification though before we suggest this, because in conversations I've had with some of the electeds in Doraville as well as Robert Patrick, I believe that has already been funded through the county.
I'll double check.
I would just like to
Right.
confirm that
I will
before
if
we
I ask. Yeah, I'll ask.
sign off on
Right.
funds that might go to better use that for something that's already been funded.
Right.
I have some questions just to the whole process. You know, we've always kind of been under the DeKalb umbrella because we didn't have a choice, because this is based, the Community Development Block Grant is based on city population, based off the last sentence. So in 2010, we did not qualify to be a city of entitlement, but based on the 2020 numbers, we do. I'm all for being a team player. I know there's needs everywhere. And perhaps there's better uses for this, but I'm a little leery with allowing DeKalb County to be our gatekeeper. And having to go through them. Number one, if they will approve the things that we want to do, and number two, if it will delay projects. The census tract is the eastern part of the city, an area that I've been advocating for years for the city to spend some more attention and invest some more money. I believe the residents there are entitled to have a lot of the amenities that the rest of the city has, and quite frankly, perhaps a greater need for some of those amenities. And I'm just a little cautious that if we, in essence, waive our rights to controlling that we might not be able to serve those citizens as best as we can. So I know this is a short-term turnaround, but this is, I believe, also a 3-year
Right.
window. So this isn't just a one-time, hey, let's get this project done and we'll think about it next year. We are actually waiving our right to be a city of entitlement for 3 years. I know there are costs and hoops you need to jump through, as with any of these federal programs. So perhaps the costs don't justify the means in the end, but I just want to make sure that this has been thoroughly vetted and thought through, and that we're not losing an opportunity to serve those residents the best that we can.
So Richard's been doing some training, correct? Do you have a little training, but do you have any idea how much money we would get?
So I called Sandy Springs and Brookhaven today. Sandy Springs gets 530,000. Brookhaven gets 325,000. Brookhaven has 8 census districts that qualify. Sandy Springs has 2. Sandy Springs has 1 community development person who organizes the public hearings, and the other admin task, a finance person who does all the drawdowns, plus their public works team who does it. There's one person at Brookhaven that does it. We got a call in, but they didn't call back because we wanted to see about the other parts of it.
So it's certainly possible the juice ain't worth the squeeze, I guess. But
That's
but it's certainly, I would like to, if we move forward with this recommendation for this year, over the next 3 years, I'd like us to evaluate this more so that when the next time this comes by, we can make a more informed decision on it.
And so Jay Vinicki, is he here? I can't, we should remove the post. That's my first request. Right. We've become a 1-story building quickly. So Jay worked for DeKalb County and for a decade. And I think I've been talking about this a lot internally. So my desire was to be Brookhaven and give out hundreds of $1,000s a year to all the nonprofits. We're not going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's the first challenge.
And full disclosure, at Gwinnett County, I ran the CDBG program there. So I will say the bandwidth of the city as far as both need and ability is still not there yet. I would recommend that council use this as a bully pulpit to talk to Mike and also with Robert and Ted about please use this where we say, because in 3 years you can leave at that point, and use it as a good lobbying point.
Right. So I still want to have a conversation with Mr. Thurman. I need to research that because I had a conversation with Mayor Geierman. They needed a letter for another segment on the other side of Tilly Mill, and I gave the letter. And my impression with him, I called him and didn't sound like that segment is being funded. And so he knows it's our priority. There's some new homes coming on the other side of Tilly Mill, and they're interested in some connectivity over there. So, and for all I know, we get 50,000. I mean, I just don't even, I guess I can try to find out the amount, what we would earn.
We did try to find out today, but we have yet to.
Yeah, maybe I'll use my bully pulpit to figure that out. So, I'd like just for y'all, the motion to be worded that I have the discretion. Go ahead, Rob.
Madam Mayor.
Rob had a question too, though.
Okay, if
Sorry.
you have a question, go ahead.
My question was just going to be a logistics question, maybe to Ken on how do we need to word an amendment or a word a motion so that Lynn has discretion on how she fills out.
Maybe I'm.
So here's what I put in my scrap. So excuse me, I got to read my own English here. So the ask is for authority to authorize the mayor the authority and discretion to consider Dunwoody entering into an agreement to participate with the DeKalb County CDBG program. Mayor, did I hit that?
Yes. Yes. Okay. There's a motion on the floor.
Second.
Moved by John, second by Tom. Oh, go ahead. Any questions? Go ahead.
And I mean, we are a partner though. We're gonna work together. They're just not gonna do something, you know?
Right. Well, they don't, Mr. Thurman is saying they don't have to listen to us. I'm gonna work really hard
I
to
mean,
come
what-
to.
yeah, right. I mean, how is it the relationship gonna work?
This is one of the points where talking to elected is the best method. And I will say from the DeKalb point of view, the list of needs compared to the list of funding is an order of magnitude.
Right.
And there is a great dividing line of needs in other parts of the county where it is much more apparent. So, but it is one that they can be talked to, elected to elected.
Mhm. I'm not making promises. So the last few years, for whatever reason, no mayor's even signed it. So there's been no interchange about it. So probably because one of those years might have been me and there just might not have been any guidance. So, okay. All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That passes unanimously. Before we move on, council, I'd like to if you'd humor me, I'd like to remove Edge City 2.0 update for a future agenda, if that is okay with Michael Starling. Did he leave? I'm sure he's upstairs. He had mentioned earlier to me that he was okay if we punted it. We are punting it unless anyone objects, because it's 8:30 already and we need to get to number 16. And so he was fine. Unless anybody has an objection, I need a motion to change the agenda.
Move to change the agenda to table item number 15 to a future meeting.
Let me just remove it
Or remove it.
because we don't know when it's coming.
You just want to remove
Yeah, I
it
just
then if
wanna
you don't know
remove.
what's coming.
Right? It's not.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Michael, if you're listening, you can go home, I think. Okay. All right. Councilman Lambert, I believe this is you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a brief statement I'd like to read to everybody, just trying to provide some history to what we're about to discuss. Before us tonight for consideration is a resolution authorizing the call to election for issuing general obligation bonds to finance parks, green space, and trails for the city of Dunwoody. And for the benefit of the public, I would like to provide some history and background information which explains how we have reached this point. This process really began when Dunwoody created the city's first ever capital improvement plan back in 2020. It was clear to see at that time that if we were going to make progress on the city's expansive wish list of capital projects, that we needed a plan, and it would be necessary to prioritize the most important projects for completion. In 2021, the city council made its first attempt to prioritize this list, as each council member independently evaluated and ranked those projects, which was submitted to city staff and compiled into one comprehensive list. During the 2022 City Council retreat, we discussed this prioritized list of projects and the potential of issuing bonds at that time to fund the construction. Following last year's retreat, a special City Council committee was formed to drill down further and create a prioritized project list. The city also hosted a series of community meetings to discuss this topic. Somewhere around late spring or early summer, it was determined that we wanted more input from our residents, that it was critical to hear directly from the public which projects were most important to them. So the mayor created our Citizens Advisory Capital Improvements Committee to focus on this task. That committee met for the first time in September of 2022, and over the course of 8 months, met a total of 6 times to perform a comprehensive review, evaluation, and prioritization of Dunwoody's capital projects list. The committee's work was instrumental in constructing a list of prioritized capital projects for discussion at this year's City Council retreat in March, which has been further tweaked and evaluated in developing the list that sits before us tonight. Now, I say all of this not to belabor the details, but to emphasize the fact that there is nothing hasty about this decision. For more than 2 years, we have solicited community feedback, analyzed, debated, heard directly from our residents, and evaluated the prioritized capital needs of the city. We have done our due diligence and constructed a sound, well thought out plan to identify the prioritized capital needs of the city. What began as a somewhat overwhelming list with well over 100 capital projects has been distilled down to the 9 recommended projects before us tonight, which consists of 5 parks projects at the currently named Roberts Drive Park, at the newly named Homecoming Park, formerly known as Vermac Park, softball fields, Waterford Park, and some relatively small but still important improvements at Brook Run Park. It also consists of 4 trail projects: the Dunwoody Village Corridor, the continuance of the Winters Chapel Trail, the North Peachtree Trail, which serves not only as a gateway into the city, but a safe route for 2 schools and a connection to Brook Run Park, and Mount Vernon Road. So now that we have our list, the next logical question is, how much will it cost to build? After consulting with appropriate city staff, we have determined the funds required to finance these projects to be $60 million. So the next question, how do we pay for it? Well, there are generally 3 methods a city can use to finance capital projects. And so here's the Municipal Finance 101 Cliff Notes version here. So at least I hope it's the Cliff Notes version. I tend to talk a lot. So, so the first is to pay from current revenues out of the operating budget. This method is undesirable for large capital projects for a couple of reasons. I'll begin with the actual purpose of an operating budget, which is allocated to annual and ongoing costs of running the city on a day-to-day basis. So things such as maintenance, personnel, operations, and programs. Funding for capital projects through the operating budget is very limited. And even if it were possible to fund large capital projects out of the operating budget, would it be equitable? Funding a large capital expense out of the operating budget places the entire burden of paying for that project on this year's taxpayer. Even though the capital projects we are discussing are multi-generational and will provide benefit to the community for decades to come. And I'm going to hit the pause button here for a second while we're talking about operating budgets to dig a little deeper into the city's finances. And I feel somewhat comfortable doing this, not only having been on the council for 6 years, but serving on the budget committee for the past 3 and chairing it last year. Because there's been a lot of discussion, well, what about the city's just overall financial health? And I feel very confident that we are in a strong place to do this. So there's been talk about, first of all, I'll talk about, well, if we add these improvements, can we pay to maintain them? And the short answer to that is yes. We've actually planned for that. We've allocated $3 million over the next 5 years, so $600,000 a year to pay for the maintenance of these additions to our capital assets in the city. So we've accounted for that for the next 5 years. I think was a pretty smart thing to do. And we have 5 years to figure out a long-term plan for going beyond that. Obviously, we can't fund them indefinitely. And there's also just the general, there's been a lot of discussion about the operational deficit or that has been discussed with the budget. So I just want to talk about that. So we all remember what happened back in 2020, something that changed the world for pretty much forever, right? You know, I think the term unprecedented has been overused, but certainly there was no playbook for handling COVID. So what we did as a city, I think we've navigated those very choppy and uncertain waters very successfully, quite honestly. We tightened the belt. And we got very conservative in our budgeting. We always budget conservatively, but we're even more so. And what we did is that we plan to draw down some of our strategic reserve, or our rainy day fund, if you will, to account for some of the expenses, because quite frankly, we didn't know what was going to happen because of COVID. Now, if so the city has our strategic reserve, our capital reserve is, the policy is to maintain a 4-month capital reserve. And currently year's end, we have a 7-month reserve. So we're nearly double what our own policy calls for. And, but we budgeted to use that money because quite frankly, if a global pandemic that wreaked havoc on the entire world economy is not a rainy day, I don't know what is. But the good news is that we never used it. Through effective management by the mayor, council, and staff, we never spent a single dollar of that rainy day fund. So I think that's important because when people saw that there was a structural deficit in the budget, it's important to understand that that was out of an abundance of caution and being extremely conservative. We ended 2022 with a 7+ month capital reserve, like I said, nearly double what our policy calls for. And we're on pace for the same, not to do that in not to spend a single dollar into the reserve in 2023 as well. So I kind of took that slight detour just because I want to make sure that the city understands that the city of Dunwoody is in strong financial health and they're able to take on what we're proposing to do tonight. All right, so back to Finance 101. So we're going to move on to the second option for funding these projects, which is the pay-as-you-go method. Essentially setting aside money over the course of several years until you have enough to cover the cost of the project. Once again, this method puts the financial burden of projects on current residents, but this is potentially even more inequitable because the delays created by saving to build the project, the taxpayers that have actually paid these funds may never actually receive the benefits of these projects. And thanks to inflation, these construction delays lead to significantly increased costs to get these projects to completion. So that brings us to our third method, bond financing. In essence, this is a city issuing debt so that the costs are spread out over many years. Some people may be concerned that the issuance of debt by the city is an irresponsible or even radical idea, but in reality, bonds are the most common method used by cities across the nation to fund their capital and infrastructure needs. In fact, according to the National League of Cities, historically 70% of local government construction spending has been financed by municipal bonds. 70%. And if you think about it, it's easy to understand why this is overwhelmingly the preferred method for cities financing large capital projects. Government has a responsibility to provide for the public good. These public facilities provide benefits to the community over many years, but their large dollar costs can be difficult to pay for all at once. Issuing general obligation bonds provides the most equitable method of financing these types of projects. Taxpayers of multiple generations will both benefit from and pay for these projects. Therefore, no one group of taxpayers will be unfairly burdened. In essence, the people using these amenities are sharing the cost over time. It is also worth noting that by issuing bonds, we are able to have these projects completed sooner than they would otherwise be possible. So our current residents get to enjoy these amenities as well as future generations. So if the city is issuing debt, what does that mean for the taxpayer? Well, based on our 2022 tax digest and conservative market rates financed over 20 years, a typical Dunwoody home would pay $163 per year, a figure that represents 2.4% of their total tax bill. And a quick aside here, just a few hours ago, we got the 2023 tax digest, and that number has actually gone down a few dollars to $157 per year for the typical homeowner. So just a note. So here we are. We've created a prioritized list of the Dunwoody's capital needs and significant input from our community. And we've evaluated our funding options and determined that the issuance of general obligation bond is the most appropriate way to complete these capital projects. So now it's decision time. Are we willing to invest in both the present and future of Dunwoody? Ultimately, we being the mayor and city council, are not making this decision. Tonight's agenda item does not authorize the issuance of bonds. It is a resolution for the call to election to allow our residents to decide for themselves if we move forward with these projects. And I need to emphasize this is a decision that will be made by our residents. Our residents have told the city what amenities are important to them. We've created a plan to make those capital investments into a reality. We have done our due diligence, and approving this resolution tonight ultimately empowers our residents to make the final decision if these projects move forward or not. I honestly can't think of a more fair, equitable, and democratic process than that. I imagine there will be some additional comments or questions, But before turning this back over to the mayor and opening the floor for discussion, I would like to make a motion that we approve this resolution before us tonight.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, but we can still discuss and ask questions, et cetera. Are there questions or discussion? Tom, Rob, go ahead.
I just want to make it a point that I appreciate the work that went into evaluating the city's capital needs. And I like the idea of putting it to the citizens to decide in November whether or not we should move forward with this.
Okay, anybody down here? John?
I too would like to echo the hard work done by the citizens and Councilman Lambert. Nice job on everything all the way around. I have a couple questions. We have a list of Roberts Park, Vermac Parker, Homecoming Park, softball fields, Waterford, Brook Run. What are we doing in those? Those are kind of published, sort of, right? They're in the committee reports. Where have we published the list of what we're doing in each of those locations?
Here's what I understand from Councilman Lambert, and I think Jay may be able to confirm this. There is no hard list because it's subject to change based on the needs of the city. There is a prioritized list in the sense of aspiration until this goes through. But everything that's been distributed, as I understand it, Jay, has a notation on it that says this list is subject to change based on the needs of the city. It would still be in the categories based on the vote, but it could be changed by a future council.
Okay.
Is that right, Jay?
That's correct. Let me turn to the trails then. What are the boundaries of the Dunwoody Village Trail? Are we doing stuff inside the actual shopping center? Is this going on the properties that are owned by the Regency and other, when you say Dunwoody Village Trail, what are the start and stop locations for Dunwoody Village Trail?
So the intent is the Dunwoody Village corridor project that we have some ARC funding for, in essence, going from Womack or the Sproul Arts Center all the way through the Dunwoody Village and Chamblee Dunwoody on up to the Roberts Drive Park. So all that there's, to my knowledge, a lot of, it's going to be in the city's right of way, the majority of the project. There may be, I'm not aware of any.
So in reality, it sounds like it's a Chamblee Dunwoody project going from Womack to the Roberts Park. When you say Dunwoody Village, I'm just not sure that, I want to make sure the
That's how the
messaging.
project is named in our capital list is the Dunwoody Village project.
Okay, I just want to make sure the messaging is right.
Yeah, no,
because again,
that's an important differentiation. We're not going into the village or the shops of Dunwoody. This is on the city right away through the Dunwoody, what the greater area known as the Dunwoody Village.
Again, I just want to make sure I understand what we're voting on, because again, Dunwoody Village, when we say we're doing a Dunwoody Village Trail, it's on Chamblee Dunwoody from Womack to Roberts Park or whatever that park will so be named. And then Winter's Chapel, I guess is the same way. We're doing Winter's Chapel from Shermont to Womack. We're not going down to Peachtree.
To Peeler.
To Peeler, right, I'm sorry. So from Shermont to Peeler. Or two, yeah. All right, North Peachtree, we've talked about that, looks like it's been discussed. Mount Vernon, there's segments that are identified. One of the concerns I had when we were talking about the bond referendum was the fact that how are we going to put these questions in front of the citizens? And, at the retreat, I was asking that we have two questions, that we have a question for both parks or trails or transportation, and break them out to make sure the citizens could make decisions. It's not an all or nothing. And it sounds like, based on the discussions that council had, that we have, the seven of us have sort of decided that we're only going to do one question. I was really hoping for two. And I guess what's the rationale?
The initial, decision-making behind that process was the fact that it was twofold. First of all, there's going to also be on the ballot this year a SPLOST question. And because that is transportation related, we didn't want to confuse the voters into thinking, well, are there two transportation issues? But really more important than that was the fact that after evaluating with staff, We believe that the current transportation projects list can be adequately managed through SPOS funding. That if we all of a sudden had a significant amount of capital available to do a number of transportation related projects, think intersections and things like that, that logistically, it wouldn't make sense to do those all at once. Would we want to shut down 3 or 4 intersections across the city at one time? We're dealing with the pain of doing one. So to have 3 or 4 portions of the city shut down just didn't seem to be logistically desirable. And so after discussion with staff, the determination was made that we can meet our transportation needs through SPOS funding, and possibly even get a little bit more done on the transportation side if we allocate some already pre-approved funding for some of these trail segments to other transportation projects through SPOS. So for example, the first section of Mount Vernon Road is allocated through SPOS. If that portion of trail is paid for through the bond, we will now have the ability to reallocate those funds to another project.
All right, well, thank you. Again, I was really hoping for 2 separate questions, but I defer. Thank you.
Anybody else? I want to ask a question about the list. Wait, was there anybody else that I missed? So I think we need a list that's pretty specific. So what am I missing? Because I thought we had a list that was pretty specific, and I think the voters, it's our first time going to the voters, and I think we need to tell them what we hope to do. Obviously, you could run out of money, but I don't want to I don't want to tell people we're doing X and then not do it. So for example, I'm much more familiar with the parks list, but on the parks list, everything on there is stuff that we have committed to do in one shape or form. We've designed the 2 new parks. We've committed to Waterford for the improvements there. Whatever's on the list, that's stuff we are well known. Is the concern with the paths that what is your intention with adding the city's needs change or whatever? What is the intention?
To help to kind of get a general explanation of this, to help with all, the document that is the actual resolution has the question embedded within it. It caps the amount at 60 million of issuance. So you are prohibited from doing more than that. And it gives you what we call the broad umbrella categories. It gives you recreational trails and park acquisition, gives you land purchases and parks, basically those categories as your bigger ones in there. The supporting documentation that's in Tom Lambert's memo gives a list of projects that can be worked on subject to the needs of the city in the future. A council 2 years from now can find new prioritize. And as he was saying earlier, there are certain things in plans that would be in there today that 5 years from now wouldn't exist. So things may need to get modified. That the only commitment to the voters on this is that current umbrella list, you are restricted, and it is on parks and trails only. Land acquisition and development included. So in other words, you couldn't go through, we'll go with the sidewalk projects that we did. That was the one that was removed earlier.
Okay, so does this mean you could add a new park?
Under land development acquisition, you
No,
could
you could buy it, but then could you use the bond money to develop it?
development and acquisition.
That wasn't a good example. Does it mean that you could, somebody tell me an existing park, Perimeter Center East, Two Bridges Park, that we could decide to add tennis courts and put them. Okay, so I don't love that. I don't think I think we need to be as transparent as possible.
I think the list identifies our intent. The concern was, for example, if we were to construct a trail and we ran into an issue that we're not aware of today, whether there be a utility or a right-of-way issue, and now perhaps that segment is no longer viable. If we were bound to that list, we might have an issue. And so like with everything, a certain degree of flexibility is required. However, the intent is to execute the list of projects that we've discussed, and that is moving forward.
Madam Mayor, the Dunwoody Village, it's referred to as a Village Crossroads on our Public Works project page, by the way.
So we would want to change the name to Village Crossroads. I don't know. Okay, so I might argue that we make the list more binding. And then if you don't have to take down all the debt. So if something were to happen and you couldn't complete something, that you just don't take the debt and you renewed with the voters earlier. I just think it's really important that we're as transparent as possible with this process, because we have not successfully issued bonds, and I think I very much want this to be successful. So if there's language in here that needs to be clearer, what would that look like to someone who works in like, what would that look like?
We will need a few minutes to sidebar on that because this is a change.
Can I?
Well, they might not support the change, actually.
We had the opportunity, I'm not sure who all met here with the bond attorneys over the last week or two. I did a one-on-one session. I hope you all did that. It was very informative. But Jay or the bond attorneys, can we kind of have a discussion on how we can how we draw down the money as we need?
Right.
And that it's not just 60 million on day one. Could we just kind of walk through that example of like, what can we kind of say that? So we would each year, we know the projects we're going to undertake, that we're going to draw that particular amount out of the bond.
Right.
Correct? That, are we all in understanding here of how that process works up on council?
Yes.
Okay, to discuss, and we tossed out what the council does have the power to put restrictions upon it. Now, I would not recommend changing the resolution
Okay.
itself. That is a very mechanical problem that I would
Right.
recommend us actually stepping away from and coming back later.
Mhm.
The thing is, the council would have to pass restrictions, that is these projects and only these. Your trouble that becomes is what happens when a project you don't do it and you end up having more money than you do projects. And that is a different issue that the voters will then consider. You would need to put a dollar figure with each and every project.
Okay. Whatever. Else have questions or comments? So what you're saying is that we can vote on this as is, and then at some point vote to restrict the funds if you choose. If I know you don't want us to, but that was not my question.
Jay, let me answer that if
Okay.
you don't mind. So, Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
if you adopt this resolution, it will start the process of a ballot question in those categories.
Right.
At any time between now and the vote,
Mhm.
y'all could pass a resolution
Okay.
saying, here's our priorities.
Okay.
Now, there's legal reasons why we don't recommend that. That's why it didn't come that way. We're not addressing the politics. We're
Right.
only addressing the legal challenges. Having said that, you could restrict this at any time,
Okay.
but once you do, you'll be bound by that restriction.
Okay.
And everybody will be bound because whatever you put on the streets
Hmm.
becomes part of the question, even though it doesn't appear in the words on the ballot. That's
Okay.
why we put drafts on everything. That's why we put subject to change based on need. There's one more element that just sort of got overlooked a little bit. And I don't think it was intended. The reason for that, besides the drawdown schedule, yes, you can issue the bonds in tranches, meaning different X, Y, and Z until it adds up to the amount on your referendum. But there's a reason, several reasons. One, for arbitrage purposes, the ability to earn reinvestment money while the money is pooled. You got to have an intent that you're going to build out this project within 3 years, or at least start 85% completion. Tom, am I right on the percentage? 85% completion. What Tom's crew said with the team is, we want to be able to be shovel ready at any stage. And if we put a prioritized list, and you got to do one first, if one has an EPA challenge, if one has an acquisition challenge, it's going to stop the whole ball of works. And eventually a non-taxable issue could subject to that you can't complete within the required time. You don't have to actually complete it. You have to have the intent to complete it. Could cause a series of hiccups later. So from the legal side, we want to be very careful about, we're only going to do this one first, and then we're only going to do this one second, because the cost overrun changes in mindset. You may hear something later that whatever the reason may be, But the funding mechanism, what the team has done, the financial part of the team has given scenarios of a drawdown schedule where you could maximize the interest earnings during the period of time the IRS allows you to maximize that interest earnings and still have money ready to go so you can build things. So we would discourage a list that was 1, 2, 3, 4. It's up to y'all politically whether you do that. If you want a list as specific, once you make it specific and bind yourself to that specific list, you're sort of stuck with it. And you couldn't change it later. There's some mechanisms about how the refunding mechanisms and all that I don't need to get into tonight. But I'm only, Madam Mayor, giving you the legal side. I'm not giving you to decide that it's y'all's prerogative to do whatever you want.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments? All right, there is a motion on the floor. And there's a second. There, because we couldn't have been talking about it that way if there wasn't. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1, Sharon. Thank you. Is Mr. Walker for a discussion item number 13, because we've already done number 12.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
The next agenda item I have is
Yeah.
a discussion on paving the entryway into Two Bridges Park. As y'all know, we opened the park just a few weeks ago, and to meet that deadline, we were not able to pave the main drive lane off of Perimeter Center East. As you've probably seen, if you've been out to the park, it's in pretty rough shape. So we are asking for a $94,735,000.
There's something a little strange on our screens. It's a VIA screen. Is it on the screen out there? No.
It's just a black screen.
Okay. It doesn't matter. There's no presentation for this item,
No,
correct?
no,
Okay.
Just
All right. Does anybody have any questions or concerns with this? Is this okay? I have one question. So we were under budget on this park.
that's correct.
So does this amount put us at budget or over?
We're still under budget.
We're still under budget.
We have
Fantastic.
a decent amount of the budget.
Okay.
We budgeted $3 million for
Right.
the park. We
Right.
came in just over 2.6.
And this
so
will
it's
be
just shy of
2.7.
400,000.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
I have just one quick question. So this driveway is the only way into this little park. So do we
Actually,
know how
there's-
long it'll take to?
A couple of days. We'll close it down to pave it. There is parallel parking and access off Perimeter Center East Extension. We used to go down through the old data center, so this is not the only
Yeah,
access.
right now it doesn't look like a park entrance, so I'm all in favor of cleaning it up.
Anybody else? Is that okay? Consent, hold on.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
This is really just an update since there's only one meeting in June. Wanted to go ahead and put this on for discussion. We're in the process right now of evaluating proposals from a request for qualifications that we issued for the North Salford path that we received federal money for design for last year. We've received five qualified proposals, and we narrowed it down to 4, and now we're in the process of evaluating those 4, and we'll bring back a recommendation at the June meeting for awarding a contract for design. And this project goes from where the short piece of path ends on North Salford now down to Cotillion Drive.
Awesome. And I guess we have to wait for the 285 managed lanes to know what's going to happen.
With this project?
Well,
or-
no, up Cotillion or
Oh,
under.
Right. This
the
one would
interstate.
just go to
goes
Cotillion
there.
and stop.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
So Michael, I didn't look at the RFP for the scope of the design. Are you giving them certain things to look at? Facility wise, because that road is really, really wide, the existing curb, right? In some places up to the park. So I think like a phased to get to Pernichel, that first.
Right.
That road is fairly wide with the pavement there. Because, are you considering like that center lane is really, really wide, able to use existing right away, right?
Right, yeah, it is very wide, and so we do have some room to to adjust the road if we need to stay in the right of way. You know, the goal will be to minimize the need for right of way as much as possible.
And I'd love to entertain, of course, the concept is a concept, but we could potentially phase it. That northern sector could be like a phase one, which seems to be less issues to get to the Pernishaw, right? That really makes a connection there. And then consider a phase two down to 285 potentially.
Yes, yeah. I mean, all that will depend on funding, because right now the federal money we got is just for design.
Sure.
So, you know, depending on if we can get any more federal money or how much city money we have, yes, it's a pretty long corridor, so phasing probably.
That'd be great. Great,
will be
thanks.
considered.
John, did you have a question? All right, so this will not be consent because we will not have seen it, but thank you. Does anybody else have questions? It'll be a business item. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So as Chief makes his way up here, because I think that's next, because we excuse Michael Starling. I wanted to give everyone a little bit of background information. There's not very many people left here, but hopefully some people are listening at home about the laws and the regulations in Georgia and EMS service. So I want to start with something that in all our years of discussing EMS that we didn't really talk about until that I learned this past year. We could start our own fire department in Georgia, like the city of Dunwoody could start our own fire department and we still could not operate our own ambulances because of the way the zones and the licenses are held. My friend, the mayor of College Park, they actually bought 2 transport vehicles and they can only take people to the hospital in them when they're dying because they're not the license holder. And so in 2017 and 18, when we were talking a lot about it in Dunwoody, we didn't have any city in DeKalb that would join the discussion. There wasn't, leadership was unable to build partnerships. And in the meantime, we did work, we came to an agreement with DeKalb County. They did some of what they were supposed to do, or it's really AMR. They didn't do all of what they were supposed to do. But we had improvement through 2019. Towards the end of the year, we were seeing real improvement. Then the pandemic happened and the bottom fell out and we were very patient as we waited. In the meantime, now everyone's having problems. It's not just us. Everyone's talking about it. It was never just us, but it's worse for everybody now. To the point where 2 different legislators, one House of Representative and one senator, dropped 2 different, the bills were not the same, but they were addressing this inability of cities to address, essentially, they were both targeted to helping cities address response time issues. Both bills stalled because the Department of Public Health put a lot of pressure on the legislators. Like there were legislators who signed on and then signed off. Like they signed on and the next day, I guess somebody from the Department of Public Health, but the Department of Public Health, in my opinion, has not really offered any solutions. They believe that this process that we have gone through twice now, where you go to your zone, is that what it's called, Eric? The zone committee, and you beg for assistance. And you ask for assistance and then they tell you they don't have any power to do anything. It's really just the state. Now, last time they put some requirements on DeKalb, but there's no power to enforce it. And so we built into our AMR fund, or not our AMR, ARP funds to try to pilot a solution to see what would happen if we added some of our money and hired an ambulance to be based in Dunwoody to see what would happen, to see if it would make an improvement. And so Chief is here to present this concept, but I wanted everyone to understand. So on the survey, at least one person wrote that we had ceded our ability to do EMS to the state, to the county, but that is not true. In a million years, that's not true. We would do it tomorrow if we could find a path, but go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The mayor has kind of summed it up, but I'll tell you where we're at with this. I think everybody knows, but we're currently in the process with the Region 3 Council. They've formed another ad hoc committee that is looking at our current issues and the situation. As the mayor said, We're not alone in that this time. There's other cities that have been coming to the meetings and speaking. And so we're in process with that. Part of the, I guess last time we went through that, DeKalb was in the middle of bidding out their ambulance services. And part of that process was they included a caveat in the contract with AMR that other cities could ask for additional ambulance services on a contractual basis with them, and it outlined in the contract what the cost for that service is. So we looked at this and evaluated DeKalb County Fire provided some stats, and we looked to find out what's our peak hours and what's the minimum we could kind of have to get the benefit of having an extra ambulance in Dunwoody. And so what we come up with is an ambulance in Dunwoody, an ALS ambulance that would be here from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 365 days a year. The cost for that ambulance is $129.38 an hour. And it would be manned with a paramedic, at least one paramedic and an EMT. And that ambulance would be outside the zone that we are in. It would operate only in Dunwoody. So unless there was some terrible emergency, but for instance, they would respond to a certain type of call that we would have, the more serious calls in Dunwoody. And if they went to the hospital, as soon as they went back in service, they would immediately come back to Dunwoody. They wouldn't divert to other calls. They would only be here in Dunwoody. The MOU that we have with DeKalb County right now would be unaffected. They would continue to provide that. And of course, on our monthly reports, we would be able to tell how many calls each we're going to and be able to really tell if that service was still being provided at the same level. As the mayor said, the council budgeted $600,000 in ARPA 2 funds. The total cost for this for 1 year is $566,684.40. And in discussing this internally with the staff at our department, we feel like it could make a significant improvement in our response times, especially to those emergency calls. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Stacey, do you have questions? Yeah, I saw you writing.
Yeah. You say you had just said, we think this is going to improve our response time. What's our metric? Like, how are we going to measure if it actually is improving it?
Well, we get a monthly report that shows the response times. And so once it's instituted, if those response times don't change, then it's obviously not having an effect, but we should see
But does that metric for the monthly metric, that just comes from DeKalb County? So is ours with our Dunwoody AMR just get added in, or
no,
who's going to
our
compile that?
response times will be added into that. So if, for instance, it's 21 minutes and 30 seconds, and then it's reduced to 19 minutes, we would know that it made, that much of an improvement. But it'll be, the numbers will be all in the same. We're not creating a number over here and trying to merge it. It will be merged on their end. Yeah.
John.
Yeah, Chief, I am in favor of this. Correct me if I'm wrong. We are using federal funds for this temporary 1-year project. The funds are already set aside. So we have that. The funding is there. When it's successful, we're going to have to find more funding. It's a problem that we're going to have to face I hope it's successful. You mentioned the MOU. Correct me, at one point in the MOU, or at least maybe the prior MOU, DeKalb County said they were going to GPS or GIS all of their ambulances and tell us their location. Is that the MOU that we're currently in?
That's correct.
And how are they doing? Are they successful in GISing and giving us geographic spatial?
No.
That's not happening. I take for granted that we could GPS our own, right? Would we have the control of putting a GPS in our own paid ambulance, or would that be outside the scope?
We could ask them. I mean, they have, all of the ambulances track them with AVL. They do, because they dispatch a lot sometimes by that, but they have them in there because when they provide their report to us, say if we had a complaint and they provide a report, they talk about checking the AVL to say that they took the, shortest path to the, scene and everything. We just don't have access to the data, but we could certainly ask in this agreement, the AMR, either provide us their data, a way for us to look at it, or let us put our own on it.
Again, I'm favorable. I'm also taking for granted, let's say it's a gunshot here in Dunwoody, they're gonna go to Grady, they're not gonna go to the north side. So we don't control the hospitals, we don't control the return time. So there's
Right.
issues that are gonna be coming into play there.
Yes.
Again, I'm favorable. We need to do something. So I just don't know. I don't know what else, what other options we have.
Right. So I'm hoping that they're supposed to have a working committee on this issue down at the Capitol. And so we have it here
On the wall town.
on the whole thing,
Yeah.
on the whole
Sure.
system. We have it bad. Our wall time to DeKalb County is now up to about an hour on average. But when I was at a meeting in Tifton a few weeks ago, one of the mayors, it's 6. It can be up to 6 hours and they only have 2 they share with other counties. Each county has 2 ambulances and sometimes they're both at the hospital. And so the fact that it helps us immensely that other people are talking about this. There's a lot of reasons this is happening, personnel shortages, the fact that there's healthcare shortages, the hospitals are not efficient. They're just everybody's, and then they hire at least in Metro Atlanta and probably everywhere, when an EMT walks in, they're like fresh meat because a hospital wants to hire them to do medical stuff at the hospital. And so there's a lot of other solutions that to AMR's credit, they have a lot of long-term plans or short-term plans. And we need to talk about, so 50% of 911 calls for ambulances do not result in a hospital transport. So there's a lot of education that we need to be working on. AMR is offering Uber and Lyft through DeKalb 911. We need to figure out how to make that happen from Chatcom, where when the operator takes a call and she or he screens it, it looks like it's urgent care. Can we pay for you to go to urgent care and pay for you to get home? Can we offer you Uber and Lyft? So there's a lot of different things at play. Technology is going to have to be part of the solution. We had said we would try this to understand if it could make a difference. To be fair, when I mentioned this, I didn't realize that if we started our own fire department, that we couldn't have our own ambulances. Learned that this year. But I think some of that, there's hope for some of that loosening up. So what we have going for us is that the North Fulton cities are represented by a longtime state senator who's fairly influential, and they are frustrated. Like they all have their own fire department. And so we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we can try this. And I think it's before we sign anything, we should define the metrics of like what we're looking at. Go ahead, Catherine.
Has AMR indicated that they have an ambulance and a crew ready for us to contract with?
They said they would have no problem filling this.
Really?
Yes.
Great.
Because it would be a set schedule. It would be in a location that the people would like to be employed. It wouldn't be drug all over the county. It'd be just our city.
Yeah.
So it'd be very favorable.
Right.
So let's go back. Stacy mentioned about metrics and reporting. We get the standard reports, but what's the feedback loop that we're going to get from this specific crew to measure their efficacy, to see how are they performing, and what's the thought process for that, Chief?
We can ask for a separate report from AMR for this particular ambulance.
Definitely would like to see that, so we can see what they're doing. Thank you. And in the contract itself, do we have terms and conditions stating potentially if they're, what's the cancellation clause? I'll put it in so many words, right? Is it, can they terminate without cause within a certain number of days?
Our standard contract.
And do we also have that recourse to terminate with?
If it's our standard contract, I need to get with the chief and Mr. Gates, but normally we have an out provision for convenience on behalf of the city.
And then the reciprocal as well?
Well, it's typically, it can be reciprocal. I guess it's whatever's negotiated.
Yeah. Okay, we'd appreciate to make sure, obviously, there's some kind of notice period if they're gonna, if they would cancel on us potentially too. Yeah, thank you.
Tom,
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what John said. And I'm in favor of this on a trial basis because the option of trying nothing is not an option to me. We've got to find a solution. I'm hopeful that this makes an improvement. My biggest concern and I hope there's a way of tracking this is that if we have a dedicated, that our current MOU requires in the station vehicles here in Dunwoody. And that if we're paying for an additional vehicle, if they just decide, well, we're giving them that one, so we're going to move this one down to Stone Mountain. So is there a way for us to track our existing MOU to ensure that the initial service that we were promised, that we're not just paying for an additional ambulance and getting the same service?
The fire chief has assured me that there will be no changes to their ambulance placements now. When we get our monthly report, we know historically how many calls these ambulances that are stationed in Dunwoody are answering. If there's a significant difference, we can certainly check into that and find out where the difference is. So I think we'd be able to tell.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure there was a way to track that end of it.
But my question is, if the numbers are merged, right, and we know the average number of calls, how do we know that it's a DeKalb County AMR answering and not ours?
Because we have the ambulance numbers in the
Ah,
report.
okay.
So it says,
yes.
say ambulance
But-
A5.
right.
If that normally answers about, 50 calls in Dunwoody, and then all of a sudden it's 10,
Okay.
we know something's up with that ambulance.
but also what we're looking for is despite what some of the advocates in the county fire department say, we are looking for better response times.
Yes.
So if they pull out the other ambulances, well, first of all, that they already do. So they told us, right, Eric? They told us that those ambulances start here in the morning.
Right.
And then they scatter. They answer a call far away, and then they might be working their way back, or they might answer their first call and end up at Northside waiting an hour and a half to be released. And so on my list is to meet with the president of Northside and St. Joe's to talk about something they're trying at Kennestone with some trauma and triage stuff, that maybe if we could just do a trial there too, because you can go there at any time and there are 5 ambulances waiting. And that's not okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can I just suggest one thing that I've heard tonight?
Yes.
So we don't, besides the current MOU and all that, what we have heard is that the private provider did not want to provide the information. So if we negotiate that into this contract, you don't want just what Dunwoody's paying, you want all the AMRs that are responding to Dunwoody proper, regardless if it's getting paid out of this fund, if it's getting paid by anybody, no matter who the source, because then you would have all of them on one disclosure. We have heard, I think Councilman Hennigan had pushed this issue before. We had heard that the cab was telling us the AMR did not want to provide it because they're a private entity and it would be confidential and blah, 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 blah. Having said that, if we're able to negotiate these numbers, we ought to negotiate any response time in Dunwoody as part of this trial deal. Does that make sense? Because then you would have all the response times in Dunwoody, not just what you're paying for collateral. You're already paying for the DeKalb portion already, right? So I would recommend trying to negotiate all the response times in Dunwoody, not just the added ambulance service that you're paying for out of this fund.
I don't think we have any power. So, because they don't have to take our money for this, they're doing us kind of a favor, but we've already tried that, right? We have an MOU that they don't follow, but there's zero ability to enforce consequences because we can't go start our own ambulance service.
But what I'm saying, Madam Mayor, is not with DeKalb County. It's AMR is going to get additional funds from
For
us.
one ambulance.
And as part of negotiating that contract, we may be able to negotiate whatever they.
We can
have.
try. I think they're doing this to make me be quiet, right? So I think that if a mayor who wasn't fussing asked for this, they might not do it.
There's got to be a way to identify what you're paying for.
Right,
If
well, I
you
think
don't
for
get
this
it, you're not
ambulance,
really-
right.
You don't
For
know.
this ambulance, I think we can identify what we're paying for. I don't think they're going to share the data. I mean, we've asked and we'll keep asking, and we just have, I mean, it's not just me now. It used to be just Dunwoody, but it's across the state. Mayors have realized how little power we have to address the emergency medical needs of our residents, because the system that is set up, and the health department will say there's a process. Well, now I can say to the health department, I've been through that process twice. I've been through that process and it yields nothing. So, the health department, the Georgia Health Department is part of this problem because they have all kinds of answers except for solutions. So, and I did, just so people know, council knows, I think, that I did go to the DeKalb County Fire Chief and say, can I buy my own rescue vehicles and pay to operate them? This was like a year ago with federal money for 2 years, and let's pilot it. And he said he couldn't staff them. So there you go. Thank you. But we will. Yeah, it's very frustrating. There is a need for a legislative fix. Well, you'll bring it back when we
Yes.
get all the details
Yes.
related. Figured out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, public comments. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment? We have 30 minutes set aside at the end of the meeting. Seeing none. City manager comments.
No additional comments this evening, Mayor. Great meeting, great conversation amongst the council tonight. So staff always appreciates the council. Thank you.
Okay,
No executive session.
no executive session. Yes. Council comments. Okay, Joe.
We've got Memorial Day coming up, as we mentioned at the beginning of the day, session, about this coming, it's Monday, right? Monday's Memorial Day. I'm getting my dates confused. So come on over to Brook Run. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. And we'll have a lovely Memorial Day commemoration with a Dunwoody resident, 2-star Army general that lives here in Dunwoody is going to be our guest speaker here. So look forward to meeting them and coming out if you can make it, if you're in town. And anyone is interested, this Thursday, the cemetery over on Winters Chapel, North Atlanta Memorial Park, the VFW, the folks that were here, they're going to be putting flags on veterans' graves Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I just forwarded on to council. I sent it to Chief Grogan and Deputy Chief there. So I'm going to be there. I invite the public, volunteers, greater public if you want to come out and put flags on veterans grave sites right there at Winters Chapel, North Atlanta Memorial Park. It's Thursday, May 25th at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none. We are adjourned.